pull up the stream itself.
Yeah, I'm just waiting to see it go live.
Yep. That would be good.
Yep, when I need the image switched, I'll just tell you to go to the next image. Okay.
Yeah, and pull up your Christmas pudding images whenever you feel it's appropriate. Yep. Yeah. And hopefully this just gets people, interested, if not in reading the stories themselves, in, maybe just seeking out something they haven't thought about before.
Would it be alright if at the end of the stream I do plug that I'm going to be reading The Blue Carbuncle on stream on Friday? Okay.
Yeah, I hope it's all right that I plan to mention that I've read through the first 12 short stories on stream. I plan to do more in the future, but not currently scheduled. Yeah. What, you mean just because we've got doctor and professor in our name, people don't just take what we say at face value? Oh, yep.
All right, I think we are just about good to go. Let me go ahead and get this rolling. Welcome in, everybody. Hello, hello. Now, let us go ahead and get started. Sorry about that. Desktop audio. I'm not used to hosting collabs. This will be my first ever stream that I've had guests on, and I am here joined by the lovely Professor Bloom. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, hello. My name is Professor Bloom. I do a lot of kind of educational streams. So I am a teacher. I mostly do streams relating to music, but I'm also very fond of reading streams, having read the entirety of the adventures of Sherlock Holmes on stream. And as far as gaming, I mostly play older games. So I've got, my trusty original Nintendo hooked up next to me here. But I play, mostly old games. I do a lot of singing, mostly classical music. recording things like barbershop quartets on stream by myself, and I organize a Vtuber choir, which we actually just had our performance of Carol of the Bells a few days ago. But I have been a fan of Sherlock Holmes since I was about 11 years old or so. So I'm very excited for this inaugural meeting here.
Very good. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Arthur, for the raid. Glad to see you come in. Look at these nerds raid. Are we nerds?
I think we could
We
classify ourselves as nerds.
Yeah, I think we're nerds. We're wearing the hats anyway. Hello. So let me
You
go
have
ahead.
to wear the hat.
Let me go ahead and say hello to everybody. Hello, Schultzy. Hello, Morozo Espa. Welcome in, welcome in. Hello, Lore Master Monty. And of course, Arthur. Glad you could join us. We are just starting our inaugural meeting of the Vtuber Detainees of Scotland Yard. We just heard about Professor Bloom. Let's go ahead and say hello to the Minimancer. If you would be so kind to introduce yourself.
Hello, good evening. I'm called the Mini Mancer, or Manstar Mini for short, and I am a streamer who plays games and reads classic literature on stream. I'm just going to jump into it. I was first introduced, at least to my memory, to Sherlock Holmes at about the age of 4 when I watched The Great Mouse Detective. And it's probably not the most glamorous way to enter the world, but it was mine, and I became obsessed. So much so that I had my own deerstalker hat that I wore every day for the better part of a year. I'm pretty sure that thing was inadvertently thrown away by my mother when it started to smell. I was for some time a student of history and British literature, so naturally Doyle was a figure in it. And while I can't say I have a favourite story of the canon, I am well versed in Sir Arthur Conan Doyle himself, and I find the world around him breathtakingly fascinating. So I specialize more in Doyle's integration into the spiritualism movement and his joining of the Society of Psychical Research in 1893. And having such an analytical mind go to a movement that was so wrought with charlatans and grifters for the betterment of research is something that I take a great deal of pleasure in, and I look forward to this journey with you all.
Good. We can talk about that at length. Doyle's descent into, I think, the occult is a good way to phrase it.
Yes, I think that would be a good way.
He was a firm believer in seances. He even believed that the seance, the psychic's fingerprints would change during a seance, and he tried to get empirical data to prove that the spiritualism and the occult was real, but we could go on a whole presentation about that another day. I'll go ahead and
Yes, we
say
could.
hello. I am your host, Dr. Pestis. I am a Plague Doctor VTuber, and I'm very, very glad to say hello to all my patients, the sick and the diseased, both physically and spiritually. Hello, 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 Bone Miser, hello, Masonic, and hello, Artman. Well, let's think. My initial exposure to Sherlock Holmes, everybody knows who he is. He's part of the cultural literacy of America, of basically the whole world. If you ingest any sort of media, then in some form you're likely familiar with Holmes in some form. The earliest influence I had, I'm not sure. I think the most specific one I remember is Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century, where they revive Sherlock Holmes in an age where crime has been solved, but Moriarty comes back. That's all good fun. Other than that, I got into reading the Sherlock Holmes canon, the novels and short stories themselves, somewhere around middle school. I think we were introduced to it in class. We saw the movie of the Speckled Band, and I really got into it. I thought Holmes was a very interesting character, and so the library, of course, had the books on Sherlock Holmes, and I decided to read it, which is very, very hard reading if you're not familiar with the Old English. I say Old English, it's only like 120, 150 years ago, but still, it's very, very different from how we read them right now. So I enjoyed the challenge. It was almost reading like a puzzle. I think one of my favorite stories has to be The Dancing Men. I've always been a little bit interested by ciphers and code breaking, and to see Holmes just look at these symbols and deduce out what exactly they mean. Just a random assortment of symbols and not letters, but codes. The little dancing men. I thought that was really impressive. Even though, Arthur Conan Doyle, he made it, he had the answer, So, how much credit can we give him? I'm not sure, but it was nice to read. It was very good fun. So, that is our experience with Sherlock Holmes. Is there. Well, I think we've all had some pretty good experiences with Sherlock Holmes. What do you think of Sherlock Holmes in, like, the current modern age? We talked about our nostalgic experience. How do you feel about modern Sherlock?
So, thinking of the most popular recent version of Sherlock Holmes, that being the TV show Sherlock, there were a great many things I enjoyed about it, but I feel like it almost elevates Holmes too much. In the sense that you don't see him working so much as you see him instantly having the solution to any problem. So while I appreciate that it probably got millions of people interested in Sherlock Holmes for the first time, I hope that they weren't disappointed when they read the stories that the episodes were somewhat loosely based on and found a very different and I think more interesting Holmes in those stories. Though I do quite like the depiction of Watson as someone who's reliable, you know, ready to drop what he's doing because he's interested, because he's bought in himself.
Mhm.
Watson's not just a sidekick. He's somebody that, he's making his own decisions here. And if he sees that Holmes is interested in something, he will then become interested in it because his friend is.
Very good. I admittedly haven't seen any of the BBC Sherlock series with Benedict
Benedict
Cumberbatch. I was
Cumberbatch
trying to
and
think of like a funny name on the go because everybody knows, but Benedict
oh yeah,
Cumberbatch.
and
So,
Martin Freeman.
I'll say I have not watched it either.
once as a cocaine addict, absolutely, or
Oh yeah,
opium, absolutely
Holmes,
opium.
Holmes was a
Yes.
heavy drug user, both recreationally and as part of his various disguises.
Mm-hmm. What about yourself, Manny? Have you seen any recent works of Sherlock Holmes or anything?
So I think like movie-wise, I'm not that big into watching television, but I know the Robert Downey Jr. ones. We
Mhm.
talked a bit about that already a bit, but uh, I did really enjoy those because I thought those were a rather good time to watch. Otherwise, I've actually really been enjoying, and I've been going back through. Stephen Fry recently did a complete read through of the entirety of Sherlock Holmes, and I can appreciate the fact that they are starting to make really high quality audiobooks and radio dramas that really bring attention to the actual story itself by people who really care about it and not just some nameless face that doesn't actually care about it at all, which up until recently was a big problem.
Hmm.
And Stephen Fry is very much so loves Sherlock, so that has been a pleasure to go through. But that's about my latest experience with it.
Very good. Sherlock is an interesting case in fair use because historically the Doyle estate loves their iron grasp on Sherlock for as much as it slips out. If they could, historically in the past, they could have controlled it and licensed it out, but it just got so big that they can't really go for litigation on absolutely everybody anymore. And so I think they've eased up. But copyright
Yeah,
and Sherlock Holmes is a topic in itself also.
I think there are only a few Holmes stories not in the public domain under
I
current US copyright law. I
think
think
that's the
they've
case
pretty
too.
much all become accessible. Also, Minnie, it's funny that you mention Stephen Fry because I recall he was in the Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes films.
I think you're right on that, but I do recommend him that the audiobooks it's something like 64 hours, but he reads all of them, so I highly recommend it.
Well, that sounds great.
And in order, which is very nice.
In order of publication or
In canonical timeline.
okay,
Good.
that's interesting.
It's always that interesting debate. Do you consume media in like release order or like canonical storyline order? They're both very different
Yeah,
experiences.
I enjoy doing both because I think, okay, what would a reader have experienced as these stories were being published? And, a case in which you've got a story which is a clear flashback and you've got Watson recalling, oh, several years prior, this was one of my first adventures with Holmes, gives it kind of a sense of, depth that, reading in chronological story order might not provide. But reading in chronological story order, you can also get a fuller picture of maybe the inside lives of these characters.
That's
I
right.
know that the first time I read through all the, Sherlock Holmes canon was probably about 11 or 12 years old, and I saw my grandfather's, complete collection of the stories, and he had long since passed at that point. But, I asked my dad, hey, what are these? Because, of course you're aware of who Sherlock Holmes is. Like you said, he's, part of the cultural, fabric
Hmm.
of, Western media at this point.
That's
So
right.
I just got consumed by reading these stories.
Good.
And I think they do still hold that fascination.
Let me go ahead and greet some people since we have some more faces. Welcome in, TV Tomago. Hello, Aegon. Very good. Hi, Masonic. Hello, Salad VTuber. Lord Master Monty, of course. Steve Jenkins. Welcome in. Gemini's Library. The real problem with adaptations of Sherlock Holmes, or the brilliant detective genre, is that the writers usually aren't as brilliant as Conan Doyle was. The unsolvable crimes they come up with are usually very predictable. That's an interesting point, because part of the appeal of the detective genre is like get figuring it out like as you're reading along with the story. I think most people who read Sherlock Holmes, the point of it is that they want to be blindsided by when Holmes like explains all his deductions at once. He makes some outrageous extrapolation from something very mundane, and you're like,
The
how could he
condition of
possibly
someone's
do
poop.
that? And then it explains it out step by step. It's like, well, now I feel silly for not putting those two together, right? That's part of the
I can
appeal.
definitely relate to that.
Mm. Yeah. Hello, Archmage's Towers. Thank you very much for the follow and joining us. And Takoyaki Mom, you guys hydrating?
Oh, I am.
Ah,
I've
I'm
got a
not sure my
coffee.
wife my wife is not going to be happy with me. I don't think I have a drink in front of me.
I'm sipping on a limoncello Lacroix.
I do have seltzers. I do have that, so I'll join you in that.
Oh, good. That's right. Watson was an army medic. He was actually the reason he came back to London is because he felt a little bit ill, and so he needed to R&R. And so he was looking for a roommate, and that's where we start off with in studying Scarlet. So
Correct me
That
if
Scarlet.
was
I'm wrong, but it
in
was malaria, wasn't it?
Afghanistan, I believe.
I thought it was malaria, but I could be wrong.
Be very easy if I had the book. I should have brought the books off my bookshelf right in front of me for reference.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking the same thing here.
Yes, he did fell ill. I thought he was in India, no? Were you
No,
saying
it
he
was
was
Afghanistan.
I believe it
Afghanistan?
was Afghanistan.
Afghanistan, that's right. I'm thinking of somebody else. Yes, I'm thinking of somebody else. I think somebody else Holmes deduced was. I'm thinking of My Fair Lady. That's what I'm thinking of. The friend from
Hmm.
My Fair Lady was in India. Different situation. Yes, Afghanistan. Good. All right. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Now, what were you guys' impressions when I invited you to a Sherlockian society?
So I had heard of the Baker Street Irregulars, that being kind of the first and most prominent society, but I didn't really know what such a society does. I was, of course, very interested because at the time I was currently reading through The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes on stream.
Hmm?
So I was very interested and curious, what exactly does such a society do? So I was very intrigued.
Eh, and Minnie?
Well, first was probably a bit of terror. Um, 'Cause there's a lot. It's a lot of history and a lot of very brilliant people in this, and living up to that expectation, I just hope can be achieved. It was also a cue for me to actually remember, oh yes, I really do actually love those books. Why haven't I read through them in the last 10 years? And it's kind of gotten me to go back into it, much to the chagrin of pretty much everyone around me.
Good. All right. So, the very simple explanation of a Sherlockian society comes from a quote. The quote is by. Let me actually double check. I have the quote right here, but the quote goes as such: "You need a copy of the canon, 2 Sherlockians, and a bottle of booze. In emergency, you can dispense one of the Sherlockians." That. Yes, that was a quote by the founder of the Red Circle Society, Mr. Burke. Yes, Mr. Burke of the Red Circle Society in Washington, D.C. said that, and that's pretty much a central theme historically throughout Sherlockian societies, is they were originally more social drinking clubs, lunch clubs, as they were gentlemen's clubs. And so, going back, the history of Sherlockian societies is one of that inherently tied to the consumption of alcohol. So if you're looking for what Sherlockian societies do, in one sense, that's it. They were there to drink. But
As most social clubs are.
So yeah,
but
Makes me wonder if I shouldn't pour myself a drink.
you'd be really living the Sherlockian spirit in that sense. But each society has their own goals and everything, and we have a mission statement of the Vtuber Detainees of Scotland Yard. Usually these societies reference the canon or some of the characters in some sense. We are referencing Scotland Yard, the police detective agency, not detective agency, the police agency of London, where Lestrade and many other characters worked at. Let us go over our mission statement. We have 5 points that we will go over. The first, the VTuber Detainees of Scotland Yard will 1. Discuss Sherlock Holmes' literary canon, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and derivational works such as literature, games, movies, and TV shows. Anything is fair game. If it pertains to Holmes or Doyle himself, it is fair game to talk about. We are not focused on any one aspect, any one form of media. And so, if we ever wanted to play games or watch a movie, talk about these sort of things, that's our goal. Anything. Full disclosure, I just read a bunch of stories when I was in high school. Slow. Get drunk and talk about crimes. That's very much it. Good. Alright. And we have our second point. Point number 2 is to conduct monthly meetings with any members who are available at the scheduled time. And so, right now, I want to make this open to growth. If many people want to, if I want to invite many people, or if we want to keep it more private, this allows us to have a little bit of flexibility in that. But there's an interesting little historic anecdote about this point. Are you familiar with the original rules of the Baker Street Irregulars?
I
No.
am not.
The original constitution for the club was based around, of course, drinking games. If you couldn't remember a quote from one of the stories, you bought a round of drinks. I'll go into this later with the first meeting, but considering this was the Prohibition era, drinks were very cheap, so people could get really drunk and play a lot of these games quite a bit. But the point we get to is, the penultimate point was, all other business shall be saved for the monthly meeting. The final point was, there shall be no monthly meeting. Good fun. It was all just social fun for drinking everything. Everybody was there just to have a good time. We have a good time here. It was actually Sherlock Holmes' base drinking game off. Absolutely, Archmage's Towers. That was the entire point, and I will go into that in depth very soon. But yes, the original Sherlock societies were just drinking games. Yeah. Saturday nights in college were pretty much a Sherlockian society. That's how you want to view it. And our third point. We are going to publicly broadcast society meetings and educate the public about all things Holmes. As far as I know, my research and Google Foo has told me that there aren't any other Sherlocking societies broadcast on Twitch, and I think I'm not sure if any societies broadcast their meetings. I'm not sure if they're all behind closed doors, but as far as I know, nobody broadcasts them. Are you guys familiar with any of them at all?
I don't know of any that broadcast.
I've never seen one that broadcasts.
I've never heard of any either, so I think this is the first of its kind in two forms. The first on Twitch and the first broadcast. So, who knows? Maybe we're breaking new ground here. And thank you very much, I Kidnap Kids 2, for the follow.
Do you now?
Sorry, I was just reading the script. Sir. Alright. Wait, I hear Amber Alerts in the background.
Oh
Alright.
no.
Our fourth point. Have all invited members received investitures in the form of canonical literary titles? Investitures are the granting of awards or titles. And so, this is a time-honored tradition in Sherlocking societies. Many members receive titles and awards in the form of characters from the stories or titles of the stories themselves. And so, we're not going to do it for this meeting, just because we like to share all our audiences and anybody that comes in that's not familiar with us. But I think it will be a good nod to tradition that we adopt the names and titles of canonical stories. I think I have one picked out. Bloom, you told me that one you'd like to have.
Yes, I've got one in mind.
Minnie, I think you're still deciding.
It is very hard to find names fitting for a lady.
We may loosen this one up so that, like, if you want to, you could choose characters or themes from the story, locations, just like the title, or just like the name of the society itself. But we'll see. And our last point, and this is our goal, basically not our ultimate goal, but something we like to get to. The Vtuber Detainees of Scotland Yard would eventually like to become recognized by the Baker Street Irregulars and formally be inducted as a signed society of the Baker Street Irregulars. The BSI are the largest, most prominent Sherlockian society in the world, even more so than their English counterpart, I believe. If you are a hardcore Sherlock fan, this is where you go to. This is a very, very exclusive club by invitation only. But many of the Sherlockian societies around the world, based in different locations, especially in the States, are connected to them through being a science society. There's no real, nothing that really comes with it other than the title of being formally recognized by the Baker Street Irregulars and having those ties to them. And so, that is my goal for this. I'd like to think that we could grow to enough prominence, maybe enough, ill reputation or infamy. Hopefully not, but maybe so, that we eventually get recognized and inducted as a science society of them. That's something that you could, not put on your resume, but it's a neat little thing to bring out. Oh, I'm technically part of the Baker Street Irregulars. There's people that don't know. It sounds a lot more impressive. But that is our mission statement. Do you guys have any comments on this?
No, I mean, I'd love to add being part of the Baker Street Irregulars to my nerd card.
Yeah, that would be quite something.
Good. And for anybody else watching, go ahead and check to see if there are any local chapters. I think there's basically one in every state and one in every prominent city, if not more. So you never know. There may be stuff around you, and I think a lot of them are doing virtual online meetups these days because of the situation. So go ahead and check. If you're interested, you could also become a member of a Sherlockian society yourself. I highly encourage it. They all have different goals, different things to do. It's very common for them to give presentations or choose one of the stories to talk about for that meeting, just like a book club. If you want to view it like that, you could. Book club. Now,
Drink
Book club
responsibly.
with more drinking.
with more drinking, of
Well,
course.
No, probably about the same amount as most book clubs I've known.
You know, yeah.
Yeah, I can't even argue with that. I wish I could.
Good. All right, then. So, let's go ahead and go to our next order of business. We have a presentation by myself. I am going to tell you about the history of the Baker Street Irregulars. What went on in that very, very first meeting? How did Sherlockian societies form? Let's get into it. Let me go ahead and close this out and let us begin. We need to travel back in time. Like I mentioned before, we are going back to the era of Prohibition.
Dun, dun.
We're going back to the end of 1932 to 1933. This was towards the end of Prohibition, very close to the end. So, but around this time, speakeasies were very easily a thing. It was more or less an open secret. And so, near the end of Prohibition, there was one person in particular, Christopher Morley. Christopher Morley was a writer. He wrote in a paper, a journal, called the Saturday Review of Literature. He wrote a column of it on it. And Morley was a big fan of Sherlock. That's right. Sherlock had already kind of run its course over the course of its life. This is after Arthur Conan Doyle's death. So the peak and the slow calming had already happened at this point. And so now let's dig into it more. There won't be more Sherlock Holmes. Let's dig into it and really, really analyze it. And so Holmes had come up more and more in this column. And so he decided to eventually start hosting lunches. Fun lunches. Lunches where his friends, namely men, could get along and have their drinking competitions. Not competition, but their drinking games. Because the end of Prohibition had squeezed the prices of all the speakeasies down, it was cheap. It was pretty cheap. If you missed a quote on one of the stories, then you had to buy a round for everybody, which didn't hurt. But if you lost over and over and again in a row, my source says that it could quickly empty one's wallet. And so, this was a good way. If you wanted to participate and get free drinks, you had to read Sherlock Holmes. So this was his way of kind of pushing his friends into the really getting into it, because, free drinks, and you don't want to end up paying for everybody. So he kind of formed his friends into his own little Sherlockian society, but not formally yet. And so they even went further. They had their hot topics, hotly contested discussions, it says. One of these quasi-academic studies was beginning to take form at this point in time. I'm off to talk about books. Chug chug. Yeah. Pretty much. And so, Prohibition eventually ended. Very soon after that. Ta-da! End of Prohibition. December 5th, 1933. Remember, we were in the 1932 to 1933 range, so beginning of 1934, alcohol is free game once again. And so,
Yay!
yeah, woo! Morley decided to have a party, right? Because, Prohibition ends. Now you're going to get absolutely smashed. Not that you had any, you couldn't get before, but now you have a reason to, and, if you're looking for a reason, you'll find a reason. He wanted to have a birthday party. Did you guess whose birthday it was?
Yes, a good old Holmes.
Maybe. Bloom?
Or maybe Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Maybe. It was technically nobody's birthday.
That sounds right.
The birthday of Sherlock Holmes is unknown. Nobody really knows when Sherlock Holmes was born, what year or what day specifically. But he decided he used his column to argue that January 6th was Sherlock Holmes' birthday. And apparently my source says on rather tenuous grounds, but if you're looking for a reason, you'll find a reason. So he proclaimed, January 6th is Sherlock Holmes' birthday. Let us celebrate with some libations. Now, he went to the Duane Hotel and Morley hired the entire restaurant with and had a few companions over. Normally, these lunches were just for men, but because this was a big party, a big event, it was men and women. It was a mixed party this time around. So it was extravagant, big lunches, big games, mixed gender games, which was not very normal at the time. Sardines, if you're familiar with it. Are you familiar with the game Sardines?
No.
I'm not.
It is inverted hide and seek. Whoever was it went and hid, and others looked for them. And if you found them, you joined them in the hiding spot. So you can imagine with a mixed party, men and women, this would be fine. Everybody's like piling into one little closet or something. Good fun for all of them. This was the first meeting of what Morley would then call the Baker Street Irregulars. Not formal, not a formal society, but just his little group of friends. Just his little group of friends. They had toasts, they had games, and they agreed that the meetings must always be 17 steps above street level. Are you familiar with the significance of that?
I'm not.
17 steps is the number of steps from street level to 221B Baker Street to their flat.
Ah.
Morley decided all of our meetings must be 17 steps up. And so, he's very eccentric as you can tell, but it's in a fun, good place. And now we get to the interesting part. We have this man named Elmer Davis. Here is his picture. Elmer Davis was a writer, among other things too. Elmer Davis proposed a constitution for the club, for the Baker Street Irregulars. He explained that the purpose of the group was the study of the sacred writings. You'll see Sherlock fans refer to the canon as the sacred writings very often. Whatever like that, once you find a meeting place, you stick with it. You'd be surprised at how many places they found with 17 steps. The ball, crack your neck, start a murder mystery at the height. You absolutely can.
It's entirely true.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to be counting the steps the next building I go into.
Yeah, same.
I really want... You know, I should check. How many steps up is the second floor of my home? That'd be fun. If you're selling to somebody that's really into Sherlock, you'd be a really good real estate agent if you could get them on that front. Do you ever think they deliberately cut out a step from staircase 17? You know, it's just 15, 16, just have to reach your leg up really high, and 17. I can imagine that.
Debating but really, what is a stair?
So, Elmer Davis proposed a constitution for the study of these sacred writings. He proposed that anybody who managed to pass a test and was otherwise considered suitable would be initiated into the Baker Street Irregulars. The annual meeting was to be held on the 6th of January, and this is where we get into those rules, like I mentioned. All of the business should be left for the monthly meeting, and there should be no monthly meeting. But Elmer Davis didn't really meant for all of his points to be taken seriously, and it was kind of clear at this point that these were to be gentlemen's clubs, like his lunch clubs, not like the fun birthday party. And now we get into, what is this test? Are you familiar with the test to become one of the Baker Street Irregulars? It's pretty infamous, right?
It's a crossword, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It is a crossword. It was in the May 1934 issue of the Saturday Review of Literature. Here is a picture of it. And so you can see the big SH in the middle of the crossword, and all the clues are references or quotes to some of the Sherlock Holmes stories. He has said that anybody with half the brain of Lestrade would be able to finish it in 30 minutes. I've looked at this. It's pretty difficult. I actually have the full-sized page that it came out of, you can see right here. Let's look at some of the clues. Right down here in the
I'd be
corner.
very interested to try the whole thing.
Yeah, that'd be a... I think every Sherlockian society should have the members try and fill this out at one point. So, like, one across. A treatise on this. Written at the age of 21, had a European vogue, and earned its author a professorship. 2 words. And they also have, like, the little dancing men symbols, so you have to look up what the cipher was. A lot of good fun here. A lot of neat clues. A lot of these are just initials, 2-word things. And so, if you ever want to see if you were up to snuff to become one of the original Baker Street irregulars, this is the litmus test. The SH crossword puzzle in the Saturday Review of Literature. Go ahead and go back to the small version for us. Here we go. Ooh, that's way too big. The small version right here. Go ahead and we'll show this one off a little bit. This one's a little bit easier to read in some regards. This was made by Christopher Morley's brother, Frank. Now, the situation regarding this was very interesting. Frank was on a boat, and he was bored. He wanted to do something while he, just out of the time, traveling back to America, I believe. And so he made a crossword puzzle of all these quotes and references of Sherlock Holmes. The thing is, he did this entirely from memory. He was such a big...
Wow.
Yeah. Were you ever such a big fan of any book that you can remember quotes and all these little facts, the ciphers and everything just from memory?
Yes, but oh man.
Oh, yeah. Frank Morley did this on a boat without having the books in front of him.
Way to show up, everyone.
It
Yeah.
was very impressive.
They were really hardened to just identify this quote from any one of the several dozen stories. Just one short quote, and you have to pick it out and tell where it's from, who said it. And so they were very much into, just the hardcore dedicating to memory of it. I wonder if that was normal for the time period, because we don't really do that too much now.
I mean, we don't have too much call to memorize things anymore.
Yeah. We always have it on reference. We always look it up
which
very
isn't,
quickly.
Isn't
Libraries.
a bad thing, I don't think, but just different.
It's like being able to remember everybody's birthday and how their family's doing, who's related to who. They just had a different
Or how
brain
many
for that sort of
phone
thing.
numbers do you recognize, or do you have memorized?
I think people just had different brains for remembering details of certain things like that back then. Who's who, who's related to who, who's going on with what business.
I mean, that was an integral part of their culture as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, this was the May 1934 issue of the Saturday Review of Literature. This was actually, it was signed by Tobias Gregson. Tobias Gregson was a Scotland Yard detective, but it was an alias of Frank Morley. And now, after this was in May. The news came, something very important, news came that England was founding their own Sherlockian society. The Sherlock Holmes Society. Sounds very straightforward, right? Very formal, very official. This would be the first of its kind. England was making the Sherlock Holmes Society, first of its kind, and their meeting was going to be held on June 6th. BSI had the January lunch, but no more formal meeting. You guys want to guess what happened?
Let's see, July 5th, the Baker Street Irregulars met.
Yes. June 5th. And you're exactly right. They thought,
One day before.
we need to take the head start. They sent out invitations for June 5th, one day before, so they could say that they were the first Sherlock Holmes Society, the Sherlockian Society in the world. And they did.
Americans sticking it to the
That's
Brits again.
wonderful.
Take that. And I thought about this, if I announced the Vtuber Teens of Scotland Yard on December 22nd, the very first on Twitch, first broadcast maybe, I wouldn't even be mad if somebody made their Sherlockian Society on the 21st. I would not even be mad. I'd have
would
so
have to
much
salute them.
respect.
Be wonderful, but
They're just following a time-honored tradition at that point.
I know
Oh
it's
my god.
tradition. It is tradition to just cut somebody off, steal their thunder. I wonder how the world would be different if the Sherlock Holmes Society was the first one, because then they would be the foremost group instead of the Baker Street Irregulars, possibly. So, invitations were sent out for June 5th. Anybody who finished that crossword and sent it in was eligible to be one of the members, with some exceptions. When I say exceptions, remember that these were gentlemen's clubs. Women did complete the crossword puzzle, but they were not invited at this point in time. Women, my source says, women who had managed to submit a correct crossword solution might yet be considered for membership at a later date, but he wanted this first meeting to be a men-only affair. So, unfortunately, this was still in the very much gentleman's club sort of deal. I plan to talk about the inclusion of women in Sherlockian societies and Baker Street Irregulars at a later date, because historically women have been pushed aside in the Sherlock circle, and they've gone on to form their own Sherlockian societies themselves. But we could have a whole another discussion on that. June 5th, 1934. They met at a establishment called Christ Cellas, something like that. And so this was originally one of their speakeasies, but now it was a proper restaurant, one that sat 17 steps above ground level. How convenient, right?
Totally
I'm
convenient.
sure it wasn't chosen for that reason specifically at all.
No, no.
Just a coincidence.
One of his favorite speakeasies, maybe by coincidence, maybe that was the reason it was his favorite. And so they had their talks, they had many, many people, and this is where the tradition of giving presentations on Sherlock Holmes came from. They gave a talk on the subject, was Sherlock Holmes American? Bum-bum. Do you think Sherlock Holmes could be American?
Personally, no.
I don't think there's anything that would specifically prevent him from being American, but I feel like it would have been remarked on.
Yeah, well, who knows? I would love to hear, like, what points they have, because, the canon is finished. There's going to be no more Sherlock content officially. Doyle is dead and gone at this point, so now they extrapolate. It's like, you still see, like, people talk about old TV shows like The Wire. It's like, yeah, The Wire! That show's, like, 2 decades gone and dead at this point, and we still have people talk about that, so it's not something entirely unique to them, right? You ever have like an old show or an old fan base that you still want a part of and like you still have discussions on?
Oh yeah, and eventually you're piecemealing out words going, actually, in this one part, and it's in his syntax, this was more American than British.
Mm-hmm. Probably like that. And they gave a talk on Sherlock Holmes and music. If you recall, Sherlock Holmes had an appreciation of music, right? He was familiar with some composers and everything. That's actually a retcon. In studying Scarlet, when Watson is like listing out all of Holmes' skills and everything, like philosophy, astronomy, science, chemistry, he gets to like arts and everything, and he goes like nil. Sherlock knows nothing about the arts.
Yeah, I know he specifically said literature, nil.
Mm-hmm. I really should have those books in front of me for reference, but that was retcon. Sherlock became an appreciator of the arts later in the canon, which is interesting. It's nice that
I think it was in trying to remember which story they specifically go and catch a performance. I believe it was in, forgetting the name of the story, in which there is a counterfeit money printing press scenario going on.
Engineer's Thumb?
Yes. Believe so. Believe they go catch a performance.
Very cool. So, Doyle is just an author like any other. He killed off a character and the fans got so angry that he had to, like, bring him back to life. People are not so different from today and back then. We think fan bases today are toxic. Oh boy, you should have seen the outrage back then.
Oh yeah, no, we have not changed as people.
Absolutely not. But I really wish I could actually hear an uproar over a book like that. Just like, can you believe it?
Yeah, that's right. So they had that speakeasy restaurant. About 20 people, 20 men came, friends of Morley's, crime writers, New York critics, coming all the way down, and they put a blue jewel in their Christmas goose for dinner, to the surprise of the restaurateur, which we're going to get into later, but
Oh yeah.
yeah, that's a nice little touch. They do all these like little references and like little allusions. It's cute. And they have one final surprise. They had one final gentleman join them for their very first meeting, and possibly one of the most important figures in Sherlockian history, not being Doyle himself or his family. Are you familiar with this gentleman on screen right here?
Yes.
My source describes him as this Nestor of American theater. This is William Gillette. William Gillette was invited and came to the very first meeting of the Baker Street Irregulars. He is one of the most important, influential, affluent actors in American history, and he often portrayed Sherlock. To many people, Sherlock Holmes is William Gillette. That is their Sherlock. We often say like, this James Bond is my James Bond. Daniel Craig is my James Bond. William Gillette was Sherlock Holmes for many, many people. Who's your favorite depiction of Sherlock?
I think mine is either Basil Rathbone or Christopher Lee,
Mm-hmm.
but William Gillette, I think, wasn't a silent film recently rediscovered.
Yes, and just a few years ago. In a French archive, I believe. I'm not sure it's publicly available, but it's there. But there's several people that have played Holmes to great success and done the history right. But that was the first evening of the Baker Street Irregulars. It went from prohibition drinking games to a nice lunch with mixed genders and everybody. Then we had our crossword puzzle, and then we had our dinner to spite the English. With a few notable people in it. That is the history of the first Baker Street Irregulars, and what pretty much all Sherlockian societies followed thereof. They gave presentations, they had fun, they talked about the books, and it's all just good fun times. That's the end of that. Now, let's look. Go ahead. Do you guys have any questions about the first meeting?
Personally,
would-
no.
Yeah, I would be very, very curious to see how I do on that crossword. Would you be able to make that available maybe after the stream to let people test themselves?
Oh, absolutely. I'll share that JPEG around. Maybe I'll cut it down to size so it's a little bit easier to read so you don't look in the full page. But I think it's good fun. I think everybody that's really into Sherlock should test themselves on that original puzzle. I'll do that.
Yeah, that would be fun.
All right, then. Now, without any further ado, we have our second presentation of the evening. Ms. Minnie Manser is giving a presentation on Victorian Christmas traditions. It is around the holiday season, and we are watching Blue Carbuncle, a story that is very closely tied to Christmas. So let's learn more about what was going on that day and age. Minnie, if you will.
Thank you. All right, everyone. So, well, many of us think that Christmas today has been relatively the same for like all of time. It really hasn't. And many of the traditions that we now hold incredibly dear were actually in, or at least popularized, in Victorian times, though around the time of Sherlock Holmes. And In truth, we really can't thank Doyle for that shift in popularity, but we can thank Dickens for the cultural shift once A Christmas Carol was popularized and became the gold standard for, peace among men and all that. Before that, New Year's was actually the far bigger holiday. But if you'll bear with me, I would like to explain and highlight a few of the traditions that are some of the most iconic, and that's actually starting with the Christmas tree. Uh, Pistis, could you please put up the first image?
Very good. Our Christmas tree.
Okay, so Prince Albert, Queen Victoria's consort, is usually credited with having introduced the Christmas tree into England in 1840. But contrary to that, it was actually Queen Charlotte, the German wife of King George III, who brought the first known Christmas tree into Queen's Lodge in the December of 1800. But like almost everything, Queen Victoria was the complete trendsetter of the times. So in December of 1840, Prince Albert imported several spruce firs from his native of Coburg, Germany, a good old Tenenbaum. But it wasn't until a few years later when papers such as the Illustrated London News began to depict and describe the royal Christmas trees every year, kind of like, an award show now of what were they wearing, what was on their Christmas tree.
Oh, so these are already decorated with ornaments and everything in the very original forms?
Actually, no. Christmas trees were not actually, they had ornaments, but they actually tended to be more popularized for children. They would have special gifts and everything tied to the tree. The picture up actually has gifts under, but initially there were no gifts under the tree, they were all in the tree. And a complete fire hazard because they were lit with candles. So, as you can imagine, they were quite dangerous. um, They became pretty popular at this point among the upper classes, and again with children were there, and they would be decorated with trinkets and other sorts of things. And Queen Victoria herself was enamored with Christmas and was absolutely obsessed with it as a husband. And to quote her, Christmas I always looked upon a most dear happy time, for also Albert, who enjoyed it naturally still more in his happy home, which mine, certainly, as a child, was not. It is a pleasure to have blessed this festival associated with one's favorite days. The very smell of the Christmas tree is a pleasant memory. To think we already have two children now, and one of them already enjoys the sight. It's like a dream. And of course, regrettably, after Albert died, her opinion on Christmas changed. But at that point, Christmas was already popularized, and so was the tree. And it took a bit of time. So by the 1860s, hundreds of Christmas trees were being sold in Covent Garden. Additionally, trees were being decorated with oranges stuck with cloves, cinnamon sticks, and pine cones at this point. And they actually had and I'll show it a bit later, they would hollow out a walnut and put little notes and presents inside. They were called gilded walnuts, actually. Let's see. Oh goodness, if I could keep my place in my notes, that'd be great.
Oh, this is all good fun.
Yes.
A lot of culture starts at royalty or the upper class and slowly trickles down to the general population. So I'm not surprised this is no exception on that account.
No, and it was like there was a Victorian magazine called Delineator that published an article that showed readers how to create their own ornaments, pretty much a giant DIY project. And they described it as one of the most handsomest effects on a Christmas tree is to have the tips of the green boughs reflecting the light in most brilliant colors. So put more candles on.
That'd be a fun experiment.
Nothing unsafe about that at all.
No.
Decorate your tree like a Victorian Christmas tree. Electric candles, please. But
I was going to
otherwise,
say, please do not.
but otherwise, that
Please
sounds like
be
a
careful with your Christmas trees.
fun experiment.
I don't think you might be a doctor, but I'm going to tell you no right flat out on that.
No, not even with electric candles. You know, like the
No.
little. No. Okay.
Nope, I would say absolutely not. Or at least do that on an artificial tree. But as I said, like, giving gifts wasn't actually a tradition it wasn't really a tradition initially for Victorians, but it definitely took part in their family festivities. but the presents were shared on Christmas Eve rather on Christmas Day, and as is traditional now, so it would be given at Christmas Eve rather than Christmas Day. But Christmas morning, the kids could go ham on all the treats on the tree. Because, oh boy.
What sort of treats do they have on the tree again? 'Cause I'm wondering about
So
the
they would
food
have
sitting out.
it would be oranges stuck with cloves. There were little sweets.
Mhm.
And actually, one of the most popular things that they had this time and was popularized, if we can go to the second picture.
Our second picture of the evening.
Yes. Christmas crackers. Actually, it was a commercial Christmas industry born the Victorians in 1848 when a British confectioner named Tom Smith, the most generic name I'm going to say tonight, invented a new way to sell sweets. So he sold bonbons when he went to Paris, which are sugared, and this time it's not a reference for chocolate, but rather sugared almonds wrapped in a twist of paper. And he came up with the idea of a Christmas cracker from that he would fill with sweets and snap when pulled apart. But eventually, like, the sweets were replaced with small gifts and paper hats, and now they still exist with the little gifts, paper hats, and generally speaking, an absolutely horrible pun.
Yeah.
Yes. Interestingly, despite being American, my family always has Christmas crackers for some reason.
Same here.
And it is a real delight finding who had the most groan-worthy pun in their cracker.
A.
I remember the last time me and my partner decided to make these from scratch, and I'm pretty sure we nearly wanted to split after a night of coming up with the worst puns humanly possible. It was brutal.
I have a question about the snap. Was it the same, like, little... I'm not sure, like, you know that little paper that you pull and it has a little smoke effect?
I don't know if it had the smoke
Pyrotechnics.
effect. I do know the piece of paper was in there to snap. I just
Yeah.
don't know if it actually had the little pyrotechnic. I don't know if it had that at that point.
I'm going to look that up. I'm very curious.
I'm actually curious about that too.
Christmas has more connections with arson and pyrotechnics than I originally thought.
It is very fire heavy. I mean, you have Santa coming down a chimney. I'm rather interested to hear about that.
Oh, he looks that up.
Speaking of,
Hmm.
yes, so we can actually go into the third image, actually.
Very good.
Okay, so the image itself is actually of one of these gilded walnuts and what you could find inside. So it was a rather clever little way to hide a little secret thing or whatnot. But another thing that we actually popularized during this time, and it would also be filled with sweets itself, was the Christmas stocking was popularized now. And this was opened by Victorian children on Christmas Day, and they would include handmade presents that would be ordered for that day specifically. So you could have like little wooden toys or little treats in there, and anything like that. And they would usually have sugared candies with barley sugar, and they'd be twisted into different shapes, including canes, which is where we get our candy canes on Christmas trees. And if you're really lucky, you'd be given some Everton toffee. Because toffee is so good, but giving it to children, that's just a recipe for a time with inadequate dentistry.
Yeah. They were very fond of their sugar back then. That's where we get the whole, like, British have bad teeth
yes.
thing. Yeah.
Yes. Though for less well-off families in the poorer class, they would have oranges and nuts. So actually far more healthy. But
All right.
there is another time. Did you find anything on that? Look at the inside.
Yes. It appears that that has likely been an element of them from the very beginning, with a tiny, chemically impregnated card strip similar to a pop cap in, a cap gun, and it appears to be silver fulminate.
Very interesting and good to add. Thanks for looking that up.
Yeah, I was very curious.
All right, to the last picture.
All right.
Please.
Our last picture of the evening right here.
So, this is actually quite fun because as we have, as if you've read The Christmas Carol or anything like that, you know the Christmas parties now and then were huge deals. Very big deals, and was an excuse for everybody to let loose and drink and be merry. So I actually have a few things. The first was the idea of a kissing bough, which we now see as like uh, mistletoe balls or holly balls. So the kissing boughs were a Christmas decoration consisting of 2 to 4 crossed hoops forming a spherical shape of the greenery that you chose, whatever was available at that time. Um, the boughs could measure up to 1.5 meters across when hung above walls or doorways as a gesture of goodwill. But the kissing boughs were first introduced into England. It was actually pretty popular in the Tudor period, so far earlier. And in the Georgian period, kissing bows became far more elaborate, including they would add like apples and oranges, and it would be described as bits of colored ribbon and paper roses and various brightly colored ornaments. But what's fun about this is that tradition says that gentlemen could pluck a berry from the bough and kiss a lady on the cheek, but when there were no more berries, no more kisses could be given, hard stop. So you can imagine the rushes to get to these to collect berries. And this may actually be where the tradition of kissing under the mistletoe comes from. Is from these kissing vows themselves.
Makes
So
sense.
that's still a bit unconfirmed. Every source that I could find was all saying that it was unconfirmed.
It's interesting how
But
different it is because today we have those like little sprigs, but these you said were like 1 meter across.
oh yes, like if you see in the picture,
Like,
it looks
quite
like
elaborate.
you can actually see one in that picture where it actually is this giant
Mm-hmm.
bowl that looked like it was a candelabra or something that people would go under to kiss.
Pretty sure the berries on mistletoe are poisonous, aren't they?
They
They
are.
are.
Yeah. Interesting. All
Don't
right.
eat them. Okay, but then we're getting back into arson territory.
Oh, wonderful.
Oh.
Yes, because we're going to talk about wreaths. This is not a new invention. Wreaths can be dated back to ancient Rome that were used as rewards then for military success and excellence. And this would be made of a laurel or olive branches and used to crown winners at the Olympic Games. Um, then it would also, but at Calends, which is the New Year festival by Romans, they would exchange wreaths and garlands and small tokens. So these slowly progressed, and eventually it became called an Advent wreath that was first used by Lutherans in Germany in the 16th century. And the first recorded custom, however, isn't until 1833 when a Lutheran clergyman lit a candle in the wreath every Sunday and told the nativity story. So congratulations, now we have dried plants very close together in a nest with candles exposed and no one monitoring it. So this custom inadvisably spread to homes and churches, and this still continues today.
You know, I
But
have seen an Advent wreath catch fire.
Oh.
yeah,
I work as a church musician. I feel like I need to interject there.
that's good to know. And then, but and then finally, like in the 19th century, so back in Victorian times, it became common to hang wreaths on the front door, and it was called welcome rings,
Ah.
which usually consisted of holly, ivy, pine cones, and ribbons.
Staying.
And yes, I thought that was rather interesting, and just how much and reckless use of fire there is. Like,
You know,
truly, it's been absolutely horrifying.
this is much less pagan than I was imagining. I thought like
No,
many of our Christmas traditions went back to like paganism. They were adapted into Christianity. No, it's
well, they were.
interesting.
It's
Yeah.
just that a lot of things in Victorian times were molded, so it was a very rigid society that was very much of we have a very certain set of standards, and we are going to take everything and morph it into what we want. Like, remember, this is also the time period when they would deface statues to make them publicly acceptable to look upon.
Yeah.
So you can kind of guess things from there. But if anyone's watching this and they would like to know more about Christmas traditions, there's the lovely site englishheritage.org that does a lot of really wonderful articles, and there are some really wonderful YouTube videos like Mrs. Crocombe on YouTube that does a lot of cooking things and a lot more on Christmas dinners and whatnot. But I actually believe that you, Professor Bloom, are going to talk about the tradition of Christmas puddings.
Yes. So this is something that I've become interested in fairly recently, mostly through a combination of constantly hearing references to Christmas pudding in things like A Christmas Carol, or even in, traditional Christmas songs.
Bring us some figgy
Thinking of,
pudding, so
yes,
bring us some figgy
exactly.
pudding.
So, as a kid, you're, blithely singing along to the carol, oh, bring us some figgy pudding. We won't go until we get some. It's like, well, how good is this stuff? And what is this stuff? Because to Americans, a pudding is not a, flour based boiled thing. Our conception of pudding is totally, totally different. We don't, boiled puddings are not traditional any longer in the US, but you see, so my favorite version of A Christmas Carol that came out when I was a kid is A Muppet Christmas Carol,
Oh, absolutely.
which is
Best Christmas Carol movie of all time.
seriously, it's a genuinely excellent adaptation. It's very faithful. Michael Caine played Scrooge as serious as a car crash, and that was deliberate. He told the director, Brian Henson, that I'm not going to wink at the camera. I'm going to play this like I'm with the Royal Shakespeare Company. And Brian Henson said, good, exactly. That's what we want you to do. But, the cultural importance of Christmas pudding was very, very strong, but it was only really just coming back into mainstream fashion around the time when Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol, I believe around 1841. So if you have a picture of a Christmas pudding or a plum pudding,
Is that the image of Christmas pudding that you're referencing?
yes, something very much like that. So plum pudding, figgy pudding, Christmas pudding, all the same thing. The plums in plum pudding do not refer to actual plums. They refer to any sort of dried fruit that's been put into the pudding, such as raisins or currants, dried candied cherries, soaked in brandy very often. There's a lot of brandy involved in most Christmas puddings I've found.
Fact.
Would these be
And,
served to kids as well with the brandy and
yes.
everything?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Not just served to kids, but they would, traditionally a Christmas pudding would be brought out covered in brandy, lit on fire, and there was a game to pluck, raisins or currants out of it while it was on fire called Snapdragon.
And we come back to arson.
We
Yeah.
come right back to arson. But yes.
It's the theme of the night.
Exactly like that. But there's a wonderful YouTube channel called Townsend's that's all about 18th century cooking.
Mhm.
And he has done a few videos on Christmas puddings, and it's fascinating because, one, they look absolutely delicious. But it's something that, growing up, you always hear reference to, and for Americans in particular, we don't have that frame of reference. So I am planning on trying my hand at making my own Christmas pudding, probably on Christmas Eve, because that's when I'll have the time. So I just wanted to give a little bit of context for that, because, well, I don't know if there is reference to a pudding at any point in the Sherlock Holmes canon. It is very much in that Victorian era that it becomes completely synonymous with Christmas, because prior to Dickens' time, if we go all the way back to the first English Civil War, Oliver Cromwell banned Christmas puddings in 1647, along with Yule logs, carol singing, nativity scenes, all of those things were banned. There was an actual war on Christmas then.
Oh, right, I've heard about this. Yeah.
And Cromwell's parliament made those things essentially illegal. And it wasn't really until Dickens' time, in the Victorian era, that I think Minnie was referencing this earlier, that there was a real effort to reassert the identity of what Christmas celebrations look like. And I think it wasn't until the 1830s that Christmas Day was actually a bank holiday in England. So these were almost new traditions being made. But sticking with the literature reference to show kind of how important a Christmas pudding was in the time period, I've got an excerpt here from A Christmas Carol, Dickens. This is in the Cratchit household. Now, they're quite poor, but there's great pride in something like a Christmas pudding. So this is the description of it being taken out of the copper pot, as it's been boiling for hours, to get ready. Hello, a great deal of steam. The pudding was out of the copper. A smell like a washing day. That was the cloth. A smell like an eating house and a pastry cook's next door to each other with a laundress's next door to that. That was the pudding. In half a minute, Mrs. Cratchit entered, flushed but smiling proudly, with the pudding like a speckled cannonball, so hard and firm, blazing in half a quartern of ignited brandy, and bedight with Christmas holly stuck into the top. Oh, a wonderful pudding, Bob Cratchit said, and calmly, too, that he regarded it as the greatest success achieved by Mrs. Cratchit since their marriage. Mrs. Cratchit said that now the weight was off her mind, she would confess she had had her doubts about the quantity of flour. Everybody had something to say about it, but nobody said or thought at all a small pudding for a large family. Any Cratchit would have blushed to hint at such a thing. So, she was worried, do we not have enough flour? Because they were quite poor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, very, very poor. But, great pride is put into this, like a speckled cannonball, bedight with holly, which just means topped, anointed with holly. So I've become quite interested in, making this. So I've got a recipe that I'm planning to follow. I just need to find some suet, which is beef fat. It's the fat that encases the liver and kidneys, and it's got a higher melting point than most other fats, which is what makes it suitable for, I guess, the way it's cooked, which is boiled for a long time. And I've got plenty of brandy. I've got plenty of dried fruits I can use. So it's just a very interesting thing that, we hear reference to constantly that I had no first-hand knowledge of. So I'm going to go ahead and get myself some first-hand knowledge of it.
If there's anybody out there that knows where to get their hands on suet, any suet suppliers, you have any cows in your backyard that you don't really want anymore, feel free to let us know. Send those Bloom's way, and I'm sure he'll send you a slice of the Christmas pudding.
I may just call a local butcher. Actually, Christmas puddings are meant to be aged, and in the Victorian period, and I don't know if you still can, you could actually send one through the post, because they can keep for months at a time, and you just, boil it again before serving. So, you can mail a Christmas pudding a month in advance, and it will be good.
I've got a question. Is this very distinct from a fruitcake, or are they very similar? Because I think fruitcakes were about that time, and they're similar in, like, the dried fruit and everything, right?
Yes, but I think fruitcakes are baked, I believe.
Baked.
Fruitcakes are baked, and I don't think they have suet in them.
No, it's got butter. Whereas this is suet and boiled for, depending how large, up to 8 hours.
Wow.
It would need to boil. But yeah, they would both have, lots of, the sweetener is mainly dried fruits, maybe some brown sugar, and then just absolutely cover it in brandy and light it on fire.
Absolutely. It's the only sensible thing to do.
Yeah, what's Christmas without a little arson? And then encourage your children to try to snatch a current out of the flaming pudding.
Nothing says Christmas like going to the ER with your hands in some bandages.
Well, there was no ER back then. It's fine. And I mean, pudding is referenced a great many times in Victorian-era literature. There's the famous line where Scrooge says, anybody who goes about with a Merry Christmas on their lips should be boiled with their own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through their heart.
Oh, that's such a good line when you know the context behind it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you'd think, as a kid, I remember thinking, boiled with your pudding? Who's boiling pudding? Because to a lot of Americans, we would think of, like maybe Jello pudding, something not at all boiled. Yeah,
Very
so that
nice.
was just a fun little holiday aside. Also, I'm going to apologize. I have looked up some jokes from Christmas crackers.
Oh.
No.
So, what does Santa suffer from if he gets stuck in a chimney?
What?
Claustrophobia.
Get out. Get out. I'm done. I quit. I'm done.
It's a whole page full of them. I'm not going to inflict more on you, but oh my. I will probably have to send some of these to my brother to torment him.
I'm about to commit ho-ho homicide right now.
Yeah.
Alright, I've got you, like, waddling off the screen. There it goes. And you're back.
Thank you. That's appropriate. Bye. It's a gentleman's club now. It's a
Well, it's you, me, and
Yeah.
a couple drinks.
When was it? The Baker Street Irregulars, I think, didn't start admitting women until 1991. Distressingly recently.
Yes. And so a lot of society, not a lot of them, but there were reasons that there are some, to this day, women-only societies, because historically they were pushed to the side, unfortunately, denied entry, where they rightfully deserved it. They completed the crossroad just like everybody else.
Exactly.
But it's more recent leadership that decided to bring them up to date with current standards. So good on them. Wish it was a little sooner, but oh well.
Yeah. But yeah, that was my small aside on Christmas puddings.
Yeah, I debated getting into the heated debate of duck versus turkey for Christmas dinner, but then I decided I wanted to keep my head. That was a heated debate back then.
Yes, Bloom, you're right.
Interesting. There was an episode of a TV Sherlock Holmes story from the 1950s, not part of the canon, called The Case of the Christmas Pudding.
Ooh.
Very interesting.
Good. And one moment, thank you very much, Bill the Corgi, for the gifted subscription to Gnarl. And Bloom, you were right. It was January 12th in 1991 that non-members and women were welcome at the event. The annual dinner itself and membership remained men only up until this. Nice.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you very much for sharing about those Christmas puddings. I don't want to try one now, but I don't want to go to the effort of making one myself.
I'm pretty sure you can just buy one.
Yeah.
But I do want to take the effort of making one myself and just hope that I don't hurt myself or my kitchen in the process.
Please don't.
You have a fire extinguisher on hand, right?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Okay.
Sorry, I had
Tell me you
to
have
I had to
brain
remember where it is.
What's a little Christmas tradition without a little bit of accidentally burning down your house?
Yeah.
Apparently, it's just a lot of arson this time around.
Yeah. See, it's perfectly thematic.
Good. All right. Well then. Now, that was our three-part presentation. Thank you very much for sharing with us Victorian Christmas traditions and the traditions of Christmas puddings. We have one more final segment for this evening, and that is we are going to have a little watch-along with The Blue Carbuncle, BBC's production of The Blue Carbuncle with Peter Cushing. Let me go ahead and open that up. Ba-bum. There we go. Now, let's look. This is going to be an on-screen watch-along, so everybody, feel free to sit back and relax. No Discord nonsense you need to take care of, no syncing up anything. This is on YouTube, actually. If you look up Sherlock Holmes, The Blue Carbuncle BBC, you'll be able to find this and watch it for yourself if you don't want to watch along with us and at your leisure another time. This is short movie, 48 minutes, so not too long, not short, just right. And we have there's a little bit of a backstory behind this. Are you familiar with the with Peter Cushing at all, or like the behind the scenes stuff that went on with this?
So
Not
I
really.
don't know about what went on with this. I know Peter Cushing's career quite well, though.
Mhm. Peter Cushing, I will find the exact reference, but apparently this behind the scenes, this was a nightmare for Cushing. This just like a production nightmare. Not that in the forms like everything was breaking apart, everything's falling apart, but just a lot of stress on him. He doesn't show it at all, but just know as you look at his calm face of Sherlock, that he is internally like suffering inside as he's making these. Let us go ahead and get started. Please tell us if we need to adjust the audio at all, if you want us higher or lower, or if you want the video higher or lower. We are going to go ahead with the Blue Carbuncle. For some reason, it likes to start over at the end, but now we have it right here. There we go. Are you two able to see it well enough?
Yep.
Yes.
Good. Right. Let's see. The little player... Let me pause right now and see if that we can get the little player to go away. There it goes. I felt like a teacher in a classroom. Teacher, your cursor's on the video.
Oh, I've had those moments.
Does anybody want to look up Blue Carbuncle facts while we're watching this? See if we can throw in a little bit of tidbits behind the scenes. Not behind the scenes of this, but just Blue
I
Carbuncle
read
facts.
this story not more than a few months ago, so you'd think I would remember it well.
I am very closely watching the fashion to see how closely accurate they've gotten it.
Oh yeah.
So it is funny that you
I've noticed
mentioned
that.
a goose earlier being
Mhm.
served at the first dinner. Very appropriate for this story. Not to give too much away.
Good morning, sir. Madam.
Dinah,
Milady,
what is this establishment?
I do not quite understand, milady.
What is its name?
The Hotel Cosmopolitan.
Precisely. Hotel. It is not, I am given to understand, a railway station in the provinces,
No, milady.
nor a country blacksmith's.
Certainly not, milady.
Then why are my rooms full of smoke? Smoke, soot, stench.
A workman has been sent for, milady. I do assure your ladyship that everything is being done.
You know what's worse than a Karen?
Oops. I expect when I return
Victorian
to find the air
Karen?
here.
Yep, a rich
Gertrude?
Victorian Karen.
Yeah.
You have 1 hour.
Get out of the way, Gertrude.
Interestingly, this story does contain one of Conan Doyle's errors.
Oh, that's
relating
right.
to the anatomy of birds. So I'm curious how that's addressed here, if it is addressed.
Yeah, let's see if they gloss over that or if they correct it. It
I
won't be
feel like
too
it would be
long.
quite easy to gloss over.
So judging by the costuming choices, they're trying to go for a late Victorian, early Edwardian, given the fact that you're not seeing any bustles.
What is a bustle for those not familiar?
A bustle is, you know, those, if you've ever looked at an image of a Victorian woman and they have what looks to be a large bump on their bum, where it is absolutely stretched out the back.
So I believe the original story was published in 1892, so that would
Mr. Ryder!
make
How
sense
you
with that
startled
fashion.
me.
The workman
Yes, it
is
would.
come to fix the grate,
Lady Morcar is only just gone.
and she will not be back for an hour.
No, not now.
Well, what's wrong?
You said the man was due.
It doesn't matter.
We must be
Scandalous.
careful.
Total scandal.
Morning. I come to see the fire.
Just about time too, Horner. You're late.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Ryder. I only just got the call.
Yes, we'll get on with it now. Well, now that he's here, Miss Cusack, Perhaps we can deal with that other matter.
Very well, sir.
He knows.
Of course he knows. I'm confused as to why his apron is under his waistcoat, though.
Ooh, good point. The behind the scenes is they went over budget, they had to reshoot, they had to rewrite the script, so Cushing was like in a panic, like trying to relearn all his lines and everything.
Leave it. Leave it, Cusack!
I beg your pardon, your ladyship.
I don't like too much fussing. You should know that by now. It always shows if one's made fusses too much.
Will you be wearing the diamonds, milady?
No. At the opera, everyone wears diamonds. Tonight I shall wear the blue
It's
carbon.
interesting that there are only 6 surviving episodes of this BBC series.
BBC did get rid of a lot of their early works.
Yeah, they
Some of
didn't
the police have
archive
been
anything in
robbed.
those days.
No, they
Your
didn't.
references
Shame.
are very satisfactory, Mr. Holmes.
Peter Cushing.
Lord St. Simon was almost fulsome in his praise of your work.
That was very kind of him.
I have decided you are the correct person to undertake the recovery of my blue carbuncle.
Lady Morcar, I have been trying to explain I cannot accept your commission.
Nonsense.
My time over this Christmas period will be completely occupied.
Nonsense, Mr. Holmes. You will disengage yourself. The recovery of the jewel is of the utmost importance.
Inspector Lestrade is in control of your case.
I
No
have
Christmas
confidence
holidays
in
for
the
you.
ability of the police.
The inspector is perfectly
You
capable
know,
of
I'm
handling this
actually
matter.
wondering,
All is
that
done is
colour
to
pink
arrest some
wouldn't have
wretched work.
existed at
Then
this
the
time.
case is virtually
But
closed.
I
It
think
is
it might
not.
have been a
The thief may
leftover
be under lock and
from a
key, but
black
the
and
stone
white
is still
show
missing.
because they
It will be
commonly
only
used
a matter
pink
of
to
time.
reflect
I am led to
grey.
believe you work
Interesting.
efficiently and with success.
So I think
Stop
that
me.
might be what this is. I
We
think
will
they
name your
reused a
own
costume from a
I
black and white
advise you
show.
to leave this affair in the hands of the police.
I don't think you could have understood me, Mr. Holmes. I will pay a large sum, a
Now,
very
wonderful
large sum
actor
for the
though
recovery
he
of the
is,
gem.
Peter
Will take
Cushing
the
at this
appointment.
point, I
No,
believe, was in
Lady
his
Morcar.
You're
50s.
impertinent, sir.
I have given you my advice.
You refuse
Maybe
to
a
help
bit
me.
The best
old.
facilities for tracing your jewel are
For
in the
Holmes.
hands of the Metropolitan Police.
You are perverse, Mr. Holmes. In spite of the fact that I have decided you are the correct person to undertake this quest, you deliberately flout me. Now, why, sir?
Your case is that of a sneak thief, Lady Morcar. There is not a single aspect of it which is of any interest to me.
He
Good
does
day,
portray
Lady
Holmes very
Morcar.
well. Yeah, I think his age lends a little bit
does.
to that. He's got like that kind of hawk nose, that gaunt
Hmm.
face to him. He said that he wanted this series to portray a living Sidney Paget illustration. I think he does that
Hudson,
really
all ready to
well.
leave?
He
Yes,
does.
I hope
Very
your 2
much.
days in the country will do you good.
Thank you.
Mrs. Hudson has been warned not to expect you back until the 23rd. That is correct?
Yes.
Excellent. Then you'll be able to accompany me to a recital on the afternoon of Christmas Eve.
Eh? Oh, yes, of course. But Holmes, who was that lady who just left?
Oh, the Countess of Morcar. It is a light but
I
interesting
get confused about the
program.
timeline, but this must be when Watson is
seems
still a
very angry.
bachelor.
What?
Is she a client?
No.
I
Well, that no doubt
believe
explains her
so.
anger.
Lady Morcar was
Because if he
unable
still
to
has his
engage my
rooms
interest.
at
It was a
221B
dull,
Baker
petty case.
Street.
Besides, I would rather Lestrange's Christmas was disturbed than mine. I shall get 2 tickets for that concert.
Good heavens. Irene Adler. Holmes says she's going to sing at the Queen's Hall.
I shall be interested to see if her musical talent is equal to her other powers. I'm told her tessitura is quite remarkable.
I beg your pardon?
Irene Adler, the woman. Always the woman.
For those not familiar, the term tessitura refers to the most comfortable range of your singing voice.
you too, sir.
That's pretty actually good to know. I did not know that.
Well, carolers.
You know, there was actually a rumor that carolers only started doing actual carols outside for coin and whatnot because of Jack the Ripper.
Oh.
Rumor, I don't know how substantiated, but I know at least was an urban legend that people were afraid to answer the door in certain parts of London, so carolers would actively sing outside in order to say, hey, we're not Jack the Ripper, you can give us sticky pudding.
You need that pudding. It's very important.
I want to know what was in that pudding. Was it opium? Like what?
No, just fruit.
And here's one of
Soaked
my
in brandy.
This is one of my favorite scenes of like deduction. This is like a very classic extrapolation of Holmes.
I saw Mrs. Dixon at the station.
The hat investigation revealing the man's fortunes.
What do you make of it?
Eh? I back Holmes.
It makes an excellent exercise. You know my methods. What are you doing?
You're hanging up your hat. You seem to want to be rid of it.
No, 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 Watson. Examine it. Tell me what you find.
Is it a clue?
Not a clue, but several.
You're not a case.
No, no, no. Here is my glass. Now, tell me about that hat. I'm delighted to see you back. It is lonely here without you. I trust you return my compliments to Mrs. Dixon. Now, what do you find?
Is this a suitable lounging coat and color for a lounging
Now,
coat?
that hat is the trophy of one of
It would
those
have been
whimsical
very
little
expensive
incidents
given
which
that
will happen
shade.
when you have 4 million people all jostling each other within the space of a few
Yeah,
square
blue dyes
miles.
are very expensive, aren't
Well, it's
they?
an old.
Or at least in that
black.
time.
Yes, incredibly
Ordinary.
expensive. What I'm wondering
Right.
is that the fabric looks,
No maker's label.
well, the textile looks
Rather
artificial.
the worse for wear?
Which, I mean, if it's
The lining
late
is, or
Victorian,
rather
it
was,
could technically
red
be an
silk,
artificial
now much
fabric.
discoloured. The initials HB.
Let's
are
listen
in
closely
my
to this
side. How am I
hat.
doing?
Very well, go on.
Well, it's very dusty. It's spotted in some places. It looks as though... Yes. Someone has tried to cover up the spots with black ink. The rim is pierced for a hat securer, now missing.
Excellent, my dear Watson. Continue.
That's all.
All?
Yes. Well, I mean, it's very large and rather disreputable. What else do you want me to say?
Deductions, Watson, deductions.
Oh,
Love his
Well-
attitude.
it belonged to a man who has no respect for his clothes. And, yes, wait a minute. He has grey hair, has just had a haircut, and he uses lime cream hairdressing.
Bravo! You spotted the clippings and the smell. So, what do we have? A grey-haired intellectual who 3 years ago was well-to-do but has since fallen on hard times. He once had foresight, he now has less. His wife has ceased to love him, and it is doubtful if he has gas laid on in his house.
Oh, my dear Holmes, you're certainly joking.
What a
Well,
deduction.
at least you have the evidence.
Oh, come. Why intellectual? How can you possibly know about the man's financial standing?
Firstly, it is a matter of cubic capacity. A man with so large a brain must have something in it.
Oh, no, no, no. That's far from medically exact. There are some people with large heads who are congenital idiots.
True. But this man leads a sedentary life, indicated by the amount of domestic dust. When new, this hat was a very good one. Notice the quality of the ribbed silk band and the silk lining. He had the foresight to take precaution against the wind by having a hat securer fitted. But he has less foresight now, for when it broke, he did not have it repaired. A sedentary man with taste, foresight, and such cranial capacity is unlikely to be an idiot.
You have an answer for everything. But I notice you have avoided telling me about the man's wealth 3 years ago and poverty now.
Now, this once excellent hat is 3 years old. These flat brims curled at the edges only came into fashion then. If our man could afford such a hat
Are you
3
familiar
years
with
ago,
the
but has
brims
not
of
bought another
hats?
since Or replaced the securer,
Not
then he has
even a
surely
little.
come down in the world.
On women's
enough,
hats,
fair
but not men's.
But please, Holmes, just for my peace of mind, confound me further by telling me why his wife has ceased to love him.
Well, now, this hat has not been brushed for weeks. When a man is allowed to go about with such an accumulation of dust upon his hat, one fears he has lost his wife's affection. And that is what has happened to
A
Mr.
man
Henry
can
Baker.
brush his own hat, you know, Holmes.
Thank you.
She could also just
Thank
be
you.
short. Give us some credit.
Mr. Henry Baker.
The name of the owner.
Oh, come now, Holmes, really, you go too
Now,
far. To
I
assume
want
that
to
the
pause it
initials
for just a
HB
moment. There's one detail that they actually left out of this for some reason. In the book, they say that the man has not had gas laid on in his home. He does not have gas in his home. I don't think they went over that, right?
They did,
yes.
actually.
Well, they mentioned it. I don't think they got to how Holmes came to that deduction.
No,
I think he's finished, but they didn't
Yeah, but-
explain that.
well, I mean, they could
Let
equally
me see
stand
a
for
second.
Hathaway Broughton. And anyway, he might be a bachelor.
Nay, that would be to neglect the evidence of the goose.
Goose?
Lost by the same man on the corner of Goode Street. It had a label round its neck marked Mrs. Henry Baker.
You saw all of this? Then you are involved in some crime.
No crime, Watson. 2 nights ago, Peterson, the commissioner, saw a man set upon by a
So, because they didn't explain the gas, I'll go into that now, because for some reason, but this went through many script rewrites, so I'm not surprised, or if they just forgot his line and they kept it in. The reason he says that the man does not have gas in his home is because of the tallow stains on the hat, you know, the spots that he covered up with black ink.
Burning candles.
Burning candles. He says 1 or 2 might happen by coincidence, but as many as that hat has, you are always holding a candle at night, with your hat in one hand and the candle in the other. That is why he deduced he does not have gas in his home. Fun fact, I'm surprised that they left that out.
Wonder if it got lost in the shuffle of the rewrites.
Yep.
Why? Why? I mean, surely this Mr. Henry Baker was the injured party.
Ah, but Peterson was in uniform and Baker had broken a window. Seeing an official-looking person running towards him, he panicked and took to his heels, leaving behind his hat and his Christmas dinner.
Where's this goose now?
Well, Peterson has it. I felt it a just reward for his honesty.
And you couldn't trace this Mr. and Mrs. Baker?
Well, as there are some 100 or more Henry Bakers in this city of ours, it is not easy to restore lost property to any one of them.
I wonder.
What?
Oh, nothing. You know, that wretched hat business has made me forget again.
Oh, forget what?
It's something I meant to give you before. It's a small present for Christmas.
My dear old friend. Why, this is so very kind of you. Would you mind? Oh, Watson.
Seeing them as good friends. A lot of the time they're at odds, or like Watson's just like completely behind. I like to see them more on equal footing.
Well, I'm afraid it's not your usual blend, that dreadful black shag, but I feel like it.
My dear Watson, I'm at a loss.
Well, that's not like you. Well, it's merely a token.
Yes, but I regret that the exchanging of presents at Christmas time is something about which I am notoriously lax.
My dear Holmes, it's of no matter. I wonder...
Yes?
I would greatly enjoy a fill of it.
Oh, why, of course.
Thank you.
That's just good form. You give somebody like
You know, there's
a
still
nice
one thing about
drink
that.
or anything, you pour them a glass, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah,
it
you
was
should.
merely an
That's what you should,
exercise.
absolutely.
Well, how do you know that this Mrs. Baker is not the man's mother?
Oh, she would be a very old lady.
Possibly, but she might still be able to eat goose.
Well, Baker is clearly middle-aged at least. If he is still living with his mother, they're either very fond of one another or he is unable to break free and she nags him. In any case, she'd never allow him to go about with his hat in that condition.
Suppose she were an invalid?
Then there would most certainly be a servant, and his mother would ensure that Henry's welfare was seen to. No, Mrs. Henry Baker is his wife.
You wait there. I can't have people just bursting in on
This
me.
is important.
Poor Miss Hudson.
But
Mrs. Hudson, what is
he
this?
just came rushing up,
I've
sir.
got to see Mr. Holmes.
Come in, man, and calm down.
The amount of people that she's had to see to in the waiting room.
Peterson.
Oh,
See
yeah.
you, Mr. Holmes. It's a goose, sir.
Well, no, she's
What
seen
of it?
everyone
Has
from
it
the
returned
highest to the
life and
lowest
flapped
sort.
off through the kitchen window?
Oh, no, sir.
Are you sure you're not busy, sir?
Positive, Mrs. Hudson, thank you. Well,
You look here. You see what my wife found in its crop.
Good heavens!
Oh, so they've kept the error.
Yeah, so you want to explain the whole thing about the crop?
Yeah, so on birds, a crop is like a thin-walled part of their alimentary tract to store food prior to digestion. Geese do not have those.
Mhm.
It's just a small bird anatomy error that truthfully I would not have known unless someone had pointed it out to me, which someone did.
Now I know.
That's right. I had heard about this, but I forgot to bring it up earlier. Yes, so just a small error on Doyle's part, which surprises me because he was well, it's not exactly the same, but he studied medicine earlier in his life before turning to writing, actually. And so, and no, like human biology and bird biology is different, but to pass that up,
Yeah, just kind of fun little, think of it like an Easter egg now. I would have thought that in adapting it, they'd just say, look what we found in the goose's throat, you
Mhm.
know?
So, one thing about this production that is just making me nitpicky because I do historical clothing
Mhm.
and I'm a seamstress of it, the costumes themselves are accurate. They are not wearing the correct underpinnings.
Ah,
There are no
Interesting.
petticoats and they are not wearing proper corsets. If you notice, the shirts and everything, especially on the women, are wrinkled, and the corsets at the time would have made it so you'd still see a chest bump, but it would have been far more controlled. And so far, I've seen that they look like they're either not wearing them when they're off the shoulder, which would have been complete scandal. Also, the woman at the beginning was wearing a very low-cut evening gown, which would have been seen as completely improper for a matron.
Very interesting. We'll see her again later. I think she has a different outfit in basically every appearance here, so we'll see if they clean up that act later.
Jove,
see.
Peterson. This is treasure trove indeed. I suppose you know what you've got.
Oh, that's a jewel, sir. It cut through glass like putty, sir. It scratched Mrs. Peterson's aquamarine pendant, what she had off her Aunt Betsy when she passed on some years back, sir. Scratched that and took no mark itself. That means that's a good stone, Mr.
It is much more than a good stone. It is the stone.
It is not. It cannot be the Countess of Morca's blue carbuncle.
It is precisely that. This is the gem for which the Times has been carrying an advertisement every day for a week.
The reward is £1,000.
Yes, and that is not a 20th of its market price.
£1,000, sir? Great Lord of mercy.
Well, I'm sure it's very lovely, sir, but that does seem a lot of money.
Ah, but Mrs. Hudson, this stone is unique. No one has
I
ever
wonder what
found
£1,000 would be in today's sort of money exchange.
Not Peterson's goose, but Mr.
I'm trying to do that math in my head.
With the change from decimalization.
Will you go round to the advertising agency and have this put in the evening papers?
Very good, sir. Which papers would you like that to appear in, sir?
Oh, in the Globe, Star, Pall Mall, St. James's Gazette, Evening News, Standard, Echo, and any others which occur to you. Now, found at the corner of Gould Street, a goose and a black felt hat. Mr. Henry Baker can have the same by applying at number 221B, Baker Street. Yes, that is clear and concise, and this will cover the cost.
So £1,000 then would be roughly £130,000
I will
now.
keep it for the time being.
And that
Thank
being
you.
1/20th of its market
Mrs. Hudson.
value.
Yes, sir.
Will you get Billy to run out and buy me a goose?
So, £2 million
we already had one, sir.
Ah,
stone.
but this one is for Mr. Henry Baker, whose own goose is at this moment trussed and prepared for Mr. Peterson's family.
Yeah,
Well, if
$2.5
you
million.
ask it, sir, it all seems a puzzle to me.
So quite expensive.
Very good jewel.
Funny thing, Watson. See how it glints and sparkles? A beautiful gem.
Yes, indeed.
And like every good stone, this one is the nucleus and focus of crime. These are the devil's pet baits. In older and larger jewels, every facet may stand for a bloody deed. In spite of its youth, who would think that so pretty a toy as this has already been responsible for 2 murders, a suicide, a vitriol throwing, and several robberies?
Perhaps we best be rid of it.
I'd imagine they'd have better security for a $20 million
Mrs. Hudson so
stone.
correctly observes.
This
You would
really,
think.
really, I would be terrified to
did it
even
get in the
hold
goose?
that.
Precisely.
Holmes
I
is
need to find
unfazed.
out.
Did
Well,
I
it
not
fell
read
through the
somewhere
crack in
that
the floor or
Inspector
something. He'd be like,
Lestrade has
well.
already arrested someone for the theft of the blue
He'd
carbuncle?
just shrug and say, nope, never saw it.
I mean, at that point, you dig up the whole building to find it.
Yeah.
Perhaps Baker's his accomplice.
We shall find that out when he answers my advertisement. And I shall determine his innocence by a very simple trick.
It might be those roughs who attacked him. They could be in on it. They could have been trying to get it away from him.
We cannot come to any conclusion yet, Watson. Yes, John Horner is the young man Lestrade arrested. He's awaiting trial at this very moment.
The man fixing the fireplace.
Who I believe in the story was named as being 25, who looks quite a bit older than that.
This man looks to be in his 40s.
Though people did just age differently.
I'm gonna blame the mercury.
It's a 25-year-old who's seen a lot.
Oh, don't do it. Don't do it. Ah, and there's the violin playing.
Now, is he actually playing it?
No.
I was gonna say, because I played cello, and this does
Yeah.
not look accurate.
No, he's very clearly not playing it, and you can see the care
Yeah.
they've taken to avoid showing his left hand.
Yeah. It's like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense.
Also,
same
the,
to you,
the
Holmes. Let's
bowing
go to
didn't
bed.
match the playing at all, but
No.
Clearly Baker has not seen your advertisement.
Then someone will tell him of it in the morning. Come in. Ah, a visitor, Mrs. Hudson.
No, sir, a message for Dr. Watson.
Oh,
Really?
Yes, it's from the police, sir.
Oh?
I think early on they described Holmes' violin playing as
Some man is
a
trying to
representation
hang
of his
himself at the local
thoughts.
police
He'd
station.
put it over his
Let us go
knees
round
and
the
just like play all these discordant notes to different paces, however he was thinking.
Thank you, Mrs. Hudson.
is as guilty does so. He's been in trouble before, and now this jewel robbery. Our Master Horner hasn't got much to live for.
Horner?
The Countess of Marker's case, sir.
I seem to be dog-eyed.
Never did. As a gorgeous fine judge, I never did.
Take it carefully now, take it carefully. You're going to be all right. I must congratulate you, Sergeant, on your prompt rescue. He had no time to do himself any real harm.
Please, sir. Please, sir. You gotta help me.
Now then, enough of that. Like them all, Dr. Watson, he claims he's innocent.
I am.
He's a hard case.
Sergeant. Will you leave me with my patient?
It's irregular, sir, I don't know. He might do you a violence.
I am a physician, not a judge. I see no violence in him, and precious little that is criminal. He won't harm me.
Well, sir, I don't know.
Thank
as I
you,
really
Sergeant.
ought to.
Thank you. It was a foolish thing to try. If you're innocent, they'll find it out at the trial.
I don't think this scene was in the book itself, if I recall.
No, it is not.
Because of the other business.
What other business?
It lends
I was in trouble before, sir.
some more drama to,
They caught me out in a lie.
an
Never
innocent
believe me
person.
now.
Raise the
being
stakes a
It'll
little
be a
bit.
long stretch.
Not if you are innocent.
I was to be married in January. It's all off now. All because of this robbery they say I done.
Calm down.
I swear I didn't do it. I never even set eyes on a wretched thing.
With the blue carbuncle?
Yeah, something like that. You gotta help me. I'm innocent.
I'll do what I can.
I need that stand in my life right now.
Interesting hats. Are those French?
That's a Scottish hat.
Scottish.
Your advertisement has produced no result. We must think of something else.
It is interesting to me
We
that
do
hats
time
have
on our
gone
side. Horner's
almost
case does not
completely
go
out of
before the
fashion.
assizes until mid-January.
Yes, and at one point in
I am
England, it was
convinced that
illegal
Horner
to
is
go about
innocent.
without a hat.
Upon what grounds, Watson?
Well, a guilty
And if
man
somebody
was
does
surely
wear a hat, they don't take it off when they come
And
indoors.
Horner has scarcely
They'll
any
wear it
story
all the
to tell.
time.
If you had seen him as I did, Holmes,
I think a lot of our manners are still tied up in hats. You know, think nodding
My
your
dear
head
old
to
friend,
someone you don't know,
conviction does more
inclining your
credit
head
to your
upward
heart
to
than
someone
to
you
your
do.
head. Come in.
Is it all right if I clear away, sir?
Oh, yes,
What
yes, of
man?
course, Mrs. Hudson.
I thought I should let you finish your lunch in peace. But I know
I
Dr. Watson
used
doesn't like
to
to be
have
interrupted.
this until they stopped
But there
saying
is a
big
gentleman waiting to
follows
see
to
you,
auto
sir.
ban them. Oh well.
He didn't give his name, sir.
They're getting smarter.
Please, Mrs. Hudson.
Certainly, sir.
Yeah.
Do you think this is Baker?
Well, I'm expecting no other. And his reticence would fit with his other characteristics.
Would you go in, please, sir?
Come in.
Mr. Holmes?
How do you do, sir? My colleague, Dr. Watson.
Delighted to make your acquaintance.
How do you do?
I am led by your advertisement in last evening's newspaper to believe that you have possession of some articles of mine. To be precise, a hat and a goose.
Mr. Henry Baker, I presume?
A Harold Baker. My late brother was Henry. I live with my sister-in-law, and the goose is for her.
Pray, take a seat, Mr. Baker.
It's pride. You could see it on his face.
I observe that your circulation is more adapted to summer than winter.
It is true, I do feel the cold. That is most kind of you, Doctor.
Is this your hat, sir?
Yes, Mr. Holmes, that is undoubtedly mine.
We had hoped to see an advertisement from you giving your address.
The shillings are not so plentiful with me now as they once were. I had no doubt that the roughs who assaulted me had carried off both my hat and the bird. I did not care to waste money in a hopeless attempt to recover them.
I understand. About your bird, I'm afraid it is gone.
Gone?
Well, yes. It would have been no use to anyone had we kept it any longer. But I presume that this other goose, which is about the same weight and perfectly fresh, will answer your purpose.
Oh, certainly, certainly.
Of course, we still have the feathers, legs, crop, and so forth of your own bird, should you so...
They might be useful to me as relics of my adventure, but beyond that, I cannot think what use the disjecta membra of my late acquaintance are going to be. No, sir. I think that with your permission, I will confine my attention to the excellent bird I perceive upon the sideboard.
There is your hat, then, and there your bird. By the way, would you tell me where you got the other one? I am somewhat of a fowl fancier, and I have seldom seen a better grown goose.
Why, certainly. It happens that there are some few of us who frequent the Alpha Inn near the British Museum. We are to be found in the library during the day, you understand.
Naturally.
This year, our host, Windigate by name, instituted a goose club.
Goose club?
By which, on consideration of some few pence each week, we were each to receive a bird at Christmas. My pence duly paid, I chose a goose, and the rest is familiar to you.
Thank you.
It is I who am indebted to you, sir, both for this bird, which will bring an unaccustomed smile to the face of my late brother's wife, and for the return of my hat. To wear a Scotch bonnet is fit neither for my years nor my gravity. I wish you both a happy and prosperous New Year.
And the same to you, sir.
Sounds like a fun club, a goose club. You pay a little membership every month or every week, and you end up with a goose. I think there are people that like co-op a cow, just like buy into
I've
a
actually
cow.
done that, so that makes sense to me.
You are developing
Savings
a
clubs
certain
like that
vein
were
of
actually
porky
quite
humour,
popular
Watson,
in
against which I must
Victorian
learn to guard
times.
myself. But you do well to chide
Actually,
me.
for Christmas
The
puddings as
sister-in-law
well.
was a relationship I should have thought of.
You know,
It
set
makes this
a
neglect
penny
even
aside a
more
week to have enough to
you
buy
were right
all
in
the
most other
fruits
respects.
at Christmas
No,
time.
I did forget to ask him if he had
I'll have to
gas
pick your
laid
brain
under the
about
house.
the
Those
cow
tallow
thing
stains
later.
upon his hat, which you tried to cover with
absolutely.
ink, must have come from a candle. What man uses a candle if gas is fitted?
Oh, now
Here's
there's
your-
a candle.
His sister-in-law,
Yep.
suffering with him the strictures of poverty, will not allow gas to be used in the house, as the candles are cheaper.
Possibly, my dear Watson, very possibly. After the concert this afternoon, will you partake of some refreshment with me at the Alpha Inn in Bloomsbury?
Delighted, Holmes.
In the book, they gave
And
the whole
perhaps we may
explanation
have
at
a few
one
words
time. They
about
didn't
geese
split it
with
up.
mine host, Mr.
Interesting.
Windy Ridge.
Windy Gate.
Hello, Archipelago. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you're enjoying the evening of Sherlock and the short movie we have.
Good evening, gentlemen. A seasonable cold night.
Oh, it is indeed. 2 glasses of your ordinary, please, landlord.
What?
I wonder if that decanter is of like a smoking bishop given the holiday season.
Your beer should be excellent, if it is as good as your geese.
My geese, sir?
Yes, I heard of them from a Mr. Harold Baker, who was a member of your goose club.
Ah, Mr. Baker. Yes, he hasn't been in since he collected it.
I've no doubt he soon will be, to celebrate his good fortune.
Well, I hope he enjoys it.
Was it one of your own?
Ah, bless you, no, sir. They weren't my geese. I keep a public, not a farmyard.
Whose were they?
I got a couple of dozen from a poulter down Covent Garden.
Oh, what's his name?
His name?
Oh, I do know some of them down there, and as Mr. Baker said, it was an excellent bird.
An odd name it was, unusual. No, you've got me there, sir. I tell you what, I'll look it up in my book.
Oh. Sorry, Holmes, I nearly spoiled him.
Nonsense. The fellow's gone to find out.
Well, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack.
It may seem so, but don't forget that at one end of the chain we have an ordinary goose, but at the other end there is a man who will get 7 years penal servitude unless we can establish his innocence.
No servitude. That means getting sent off to not Australia at this point, right?
Breckenridge. No, I'm afraid I don't know.
You know, I don't
Well,
know.
here's good health to yourself,
Could just mean
landlord.
forced labor.
Prosperity to
Australia
your
was
house.
still a thing then.
Oh, really?
I am pretty sure on
Good
that.
night.
Oh yeah, they gained
happy Christmas
independence
to you.
1901.
And the same to you both.
1901, wow.
Good night. Good night. Our inquiries,
The
Watson,
penal transportation ended in
confirm Horner's guilt.
1865,
Ah.
I cannot believe it will be so.
In any case,
though I'm sure
we
they
have a
had
line
no
of
shortage of
investigation that has
places
been missed
to
by Lestrade,
send
which by
criminals.
mere chance has
I mean, it's
fallen
England,
into
there's
our
plenty of
hands.
colonies.
Let us follow it to the end. And now
Yeah,
for
especially
Mr.
at this point.
Breckenridge. Faces to
Throw
the
a
south,
dart.
then. And
I mean,
quick
the list
march.
of places they haven't invaded is shorter than the one of that which they have.
Try down here, Watson.
There you go. Now we're getting to the service workers, the people,
Good evening.
yeah, people on the ground sort of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, sold out of geese, I see. You seem to be sold out of geese.
If you bide, you can have 500 in the morning.
In the morning.
Hello, welcome in, Spike. I'll go ahead and pause this for a second. Hello, hello, Spike. Welcome in. I'm glad you can join us. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for the raid. You were up to yes, Toy Story Racer. Thank you very much. This evening, we have our meeting of the First Sherlocking Society of our little group, the Vtuber Detainees of Scotland Yard. Hello. And today, we went over a few presentations. We are watching the BBC's production of The Blue Carbuncle with Peter Cushing. We're about a little more than halfway through right now, but to catch you up, if you're not familiar with The Blue Carbuncle, they found a very, very expensive jewel inside the crop of a geese, and we are trying to trace where exactly it came from, because an innocent man's life is on the line, or at least jail time. So, let's get back into it. Thank you very much. We have a watch-along right here. No need to go into any Discord, no need to sync anything up. Feel free to sit back and relax.
But I was recommended to you.
Was you?
Yes.
Who by?
Windigate, landlord of the Alpha, Bloomsbury.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did supply him with some.
Oh, and fine birds they were, too.
Yeah, no doubt.
Where did you get them?
Now, look, mister. Where are you driving at? Come on, let's have it straight.
I am speaking straight enough, Mr. Breckenridge. I should like to know who supplied you with the geese that you sold to the Alpha.
Yeah, well, I'll talk straight to you too, mister. I'm not telling you.
Well, it's a matter of no great importance, but I don't know why you should get so warm over such a trifle.
Warm? You'd be warm too if you
Wait,
was
look
as
at that
pesky
bell.
as me,
It has a solid bottom, so it doesn't
pay
ring.
good money for a thing, you'd
Wait,
think
really?
this is the end of the
Yeah.
business, but oh no. It's where to them geese. Who'd you sell them geese to, and now where do you get them geese from?
See?
Man might
Yep.
think it was the only blasted geese in the world.
Well, I know nothing about that. I have no
Oh, because they
connection
can't
with
have a
the
real bell,
relationship
because it would be ringing during the whole
If
show.
you won't help
Exactly.
me, you won't. And there is an end of it.
Yeah, well, then.
Come along, Watson.
That's
The
funny.
bet is off. This
Spike
fellow
finding
won't
some
have-
real English.
Hey,
He's among his people.
what bit?
I know a thing or two about poultry, and I can always back my own opinion when it comes to the matter of fowls. And I have a fiver on it that the bird I ate was bred in the country.
Well, you've been and gone and lost your fiver, Governor. Because all Windigate's birds was town-bred.
Nothing of the kind. The one I ate was bred in the country.
It was not.
I don't believe you.
Look, Mr. Clever Boots, do you know more about fowls than me, then? Me that's been handling them since I was a kid. I'm telling you that all the birds that went to the Alpha was town-bred.
You will never persuade me to believe that because I know.
Well, you bet on it, then.
Well, it's merely taking your money, but yes. Just to teach you not to be so obstinate, I'll wager a sovereign.
A sovereign
Right
is
then,
a
Mr. Cocksure.
significant
And you, sir.
piece of
I
cash.
thought as how I was
I'm not sure about the
out of
exact
Love the
value,
way
but it is their highest form of currency.
Holmes,
Ah, then you see
Holmes
this little book?
absolutely playing
Those
him.
here's
Yep.
An account of my suppliers. In the back there, we got the country suppliers, and in the front here, the town ones. Now then, do you mind reading out that item there?
This is basically like the equivalent of a $100 bill, or if not more.
Yeah.
That refers to this ledger. Here's all my buying and selling. Now then, 40.
It's access to his whole book. All it took
so
was
if
a bit
you've
of
got no
cash.
objection, do you mind reading out that item there?
Yes,
Thank you very much, Don
December
Vito.
the 18th,
Hey,
from
Don
Mrs.
Vito.
Oakshott, 24 geese at 7 and 6pence.
And just below that, sir.
Sold to Windigate, the Alpha Inn, 12 shillings.
What have you to say now, sir?
You seem amused at the loss of your sovereign, Holmes.
When you see a fellow with whiskers of that cut, Watson, and a copy of the Pink 'Un protruding from his pocket, you can always draw him by a wager. I could have laid £100 in front of him, and he would never have given me as much information as he did when he thought he was doing me down over a wager.
Yes, it would seem that he refused his other questioners.
Clearly so, and as there are others who seem anxious about this matter, the point to be decided is whether we visit Mrs. Oakshott tonight or leave it until tomorrow.
Well, it is getting rather late, Holmes.
Yes.
And we do have the blue carbuncle after all.
And you're anxious for your supper.
Geese! I've fed up with you and your geese.
Geese.
You want to buy a goose off me, you come back tomorrow morning.
I don't want a goose
mate.
tomorrow.
Then you could go to the devil.
But I must know who bought the others.
Look, if I have any more of your silly questions, I'll send the dog
Ah,
on
the
you.
British.
Mrs. Oakshott, you bring her here, I'll tell her. I mean, who do you think you are? Did I buy the geese off you?
Who do you think you are?
Tell Mrs. Oakshott.
Mrs. Oakshott asked me to ask you.
Look, you can ask the King of Prussia for all
Prussia.
I care. I'll hand it over to you. Be off with you. Be off with you. I'm here pestering me about your geese. And what are you not gaping at? Hey, go on, get out of it.
What do you want?
Just going on here.
Questions, if you'll excuse me, sir. I could not help but overhear your conversation with Mr. Breckenridge, and I believe I can be of some assistance to you.
What could you know about this? Who are you?
My name is Sherlock Holmes. It is my business to know what other people do not.
You can know nothing about this.
Excuse me, but I know everything. You are endeavoring to trace some geese, are you not?
Yes.
Well, 24 geese were sold by Mrs. Oakshott of Brixton Road to Mr. Breckenridge for a certain sum of money. He, in turn, sold them for a larger amount to the landlord of an inn, who was running a goose club of which a Mr. Harold Baker was a member.
Yes, but what was the name of the inn, sir? That is precisely what I'm trying to find out.
Why?
I'm afraid I'm not at liberty to reveal that.
I think we'd better discuss this matter in a cosy room rather than this windswept marketplace. Watson, could you find us a cab?
Certainly.
By the way, sir, pray tell me, whom have I the pleasure of assisting?
My name is John Robinson.
John.
Please. It is always awkward doing business
John
with
Cart.
an alias.
Well, very well, if you must know, it's James Ryder.
Precisely, sir. You are an under-manager at the Hotel Cosmopolitan, and you have been of great assistance to the police, I believe. Yes? Oh, fine. I shall be able to tell you everything you want to know when we get to Baker Street.
The gentleman from the hotel at the very beginning?
The
With
very
the
same.
scandalous maid.
Back at 221B Baker.
Here we are.
Very cozy.
You seem cold, Mr. Ryder. You are shivering. Pray take that chair.
Very, like they said, bohemian lifestyle they had. Bachelor pad. Oh, she's in the house. I can't take that. I know it was their thing, but she's in the house.
No, I take mine off at the door.
Yep.
Now, Mr. Ryder, what is it you wish to know?
Which pub was it that these geese went to?
The Alpha Inn in Bloomsbury. But I do not think that will help you, for I think you are only interested in one particular goose. A white bird with a black bar across its tail.
Yes. Yeah, do you know what happened to it, where it went?
Certainly. Came here.
Here? To you?
Yes. And a most remarkable bird it proved. I'm not surprised you should take such an interest in it.
Why, what do you mean?
It laid an egg after it was dead. A beautiful, bright, blue egg.
Holmes can absolutely be sassy when he wants.
Oh, yes, he's
Thank you.
enjoying himself so greatly.
It seems a waste, but I suppose he ought to have a dash of brandy.
An excellent idea, Watson. He's not got blood enough to go into felony with impunity.
Give him some booze,
What
that'll
a shrimp
resuscitate
it
him.
is, to be sure. Compose yourself, Mr. Ryder.
That's the most bachelor thing I've heard all
Are
night.
you prepared to talk?
Give me a minute, please,
together.
sir.
Wow, he downed that.
That's better. Now you begin to look a little more human. Since I have every link in my hands and all the proof I need, there is very little you have to tell me. Still, that little may as well be cleared up, just to make the case complete. In the first place, her stone was kept.
Oh, Catherine Cusack, her ladyship's maid, she told me. Well, she egged me on. We were going to... We had intended to...
I see. The temptation of easily acquired wealth was too much for you.
I've never stolen so much as a farthing before, Mr. Holmes. You've got to believe
We're
me.
hardly talking of farthings.
$2.5 million
makings of a
sitting in a
pretty
little wooden
villain,
box.
You knew that you could accuse Horner and that suspicion would rest easily upon him because he had been in trouble before. I suppose you arranged that he was to be the one to come and do the repair in Lady Morcar's dressing room.
Yes, well, her ladyship had been complaining as usual, and the regular man was away.
So you and this woman, Cusack, seized your opportunity. After Horner had left, you rifled the jewel case, raised the alarm, and had the unfortunate man arrested.
I'll never forgive myself, Mr. Holmes. For pity's sake, have mercy on me. I've never done nothing wrong before. You've got to believe me.
Get up, man.
Get up and sit over there.
Now he's getting dire.
It's all
Holmes'
very well
hard
for you
as
to
steel.
cringe and crawl now that you're found out, but what about Horner? You sent him to the dock for a crime he knew nothing about.
I'll write a confession. I'll leave the country. I'll do anything you want. Only please, please, don't hand me over to the police.
What happens will depend upon you. Firstly, give us a true account of how the jewel got into the goose and the goose onto the open market. The truth, Ryder. For there is your only hope of safety.
I'll try, sir. I'll try to tell it exactly as it happened. Well, after they arrested Horner...
At your instigation?
Yes, well, I realised I'd got to get rid of the stone quickly before the police took it into their heads to search me.
Yes, that thought might have occurred to Lestrade's sense of the obvious. Go on, Ryder.
I didn't dare leave it in the hotel, so I slipped out for an hour and I went straight to my sister's place in the Brixton Road.
Ah, the celebrated Mrs. Oakshott.
Yes, that's right, sir. She fattens fowl for the market. Well, all the way there, every man I saw seemed to be a policeman or a detective, and although it was bitterly cold, the sweat was pouring down my face. When I got to her place, I must have looked so odd because she asked me what was wrong. Well, I told her about the robbery in the hotel, and I said I was upset because it was on my floor.
What's the worst thing you guys have, like, lost or
Back by
broken?
the goose pens to smoke a cigarette and think things out.
I mean, worst in terms of inconvenience would certainly be my own glasses.
And I knew he'd show me how to turn the stone into money, but the thing was, how was I going to get the stone?
Nothing so valuable as a multi-million-dollar piece of jewelry.
And your own freedom.
Yes.
Well, suddenly an idea came to
What about
me.
you, Minnie?
Beat the best detective that
Goodness
ever
me.
lived.
I'm trying to think. I suffered a bit of a fire a few years ago, and I have a lot of antique books, so I'm trying to think about the most valuable from that. I'm going to have to say it was my signed copy by Ernest Hemingway.
Ah.
That's not yours. What are you doing with it?
You promised me one for Christmas. I was just selecting one.
But we've got yours set aside already. Jim's bird, we call it. It's that big white one over
Jim's
there.
bird.
If it's all the same to you, Maggie, I'd rather have the one I handled.
But we've fattened yours up special. 26 birds there are. 2 dozen for the market, 1 for you and 1 for us. Yours and ours are a good 3 pounds heavier than
Yes,
the
well,
rest.
that's very kind of you, Maggie, but I don't want you to think I'm ungrateful, but I'd rather have the other.
Wait, did they measure in pounds back then?
Oh, all right then, but don't expect
think
any
actually,
favours
yes.
in the future.
Thank you, Maggie.
Which is the one that's so taken your fancy?
The one with the barred tail. Look, can I take it with me now?
Do what you like, but you can catch it and kill it yourself, because I'm not going to.
Laugh at these states for using a imperial.
The metric system wasn't officially adopted until 1965.
Wow. That's much sooner than more recent than I thought.
In Britain, that
I
is.
took it to my friend's place. Well,
That's a general copy of Pokemon Heart Gold and never figure yourself. Oh.
There was no sign of the jewel. My heart turned to water.
See, I've lost
I ran
my
straight
debit
back to my
card
sister's
while in a
place.
foreign country. That was
The
inconvenient.
pen was empty. Maggie, where are they? Where are the geese?
I knew you'd not be satisfied, Jim, but you took your goose, now you can lie on it.
I took the wrong one.
Don't tell me, I told you that before. But you would have one of them pair with the barred tails.
Do you mean there were 2 like that?
Of course there were, like as 2
Right,
peas.
pence was measured much differently before
sell
65,
them
while
to? I've
pounds were
gotta
pretty much
know.
the same.
Same
Huh.
as always, of course. Breckenridge is a Covent Garden. What is all this, Jim? Jim!
Yeah, when did the change to decimalization occur?
Again and again, I
Was that about
pleaded with him.
1970 or so?
I begged him to tell me where he sold those geese. But he was always as you saw
My
them this
knowledge of
evening.
history beyond wars pretty much stops at 1900.
I knew tonight was my last chance.
Why?
Well, this being Christmas Eve, by this time tomorrow, every one of those geese will be eaten. It's the truth, Mr. Holmes. I swear, every word is true. And now I'm branded a thief without having got anything from the wealth for which I lost my character. God help me, Mr. Holmes.
Ryder.
Should have thought of that before you stole.
Come here.
And frame them, yeah.
Definitely. If he had just stolen it and not framed someone, I might have sympathy, but no.
Out. You have about 12 hours before the police see this,
So go.
A signed confession.
God bless you, Mr. Go!
Ooh.
The sense of justice in the Holmes stories is not always just find and catch the bad guy.
Was that wise?
He often
we have proof of Horner's
lets
innocence,
people go. We'll go into this
and we
later.
have Lady Morgar's jewel, and I am not retained by the police to supply their deficiencies. Lestrade had no right to arrest the most obvious suspect before making a search of everyone concerned.
I suppose you have a point.
Oh, I am compounding a felony, no doubt, but I am also saving a soul. Send Ryder to jail now, and he'll be a jailbird for life. But he has been so frightened this time, he should not go wrong again. Besides, my dear old friend, this is a season of forgiveness.
You ready then? Well, come on.
You're an idiot. You've no idea as to what to do. And don't say you're sorry. Do the thing
Alright,
properly.
new outfit for you.
You certainly are extremely trying.
No, she's not wearing a corset. She's wearing a brassiere.
Oh, so that's not period correct.
Good day,
Absolutely
Lady
not. She would have been in a
I do hope you will
corset.
forgive this intrusion.
Ah, Mr. Holmes, I'm glad you've chosen to call. I've been expecting you for several days. I have a second commission for you.
A second? Another theft?
Somebody has kidnapped my maid Cusack. She vanished in the night.
Are you certain she has not left of her own free will?
Nonsense. She was devoted to me. I always make it a rule to have absolutely faithful servants.
I regret that the loss of your maid
Her
does
hair
not
is
appeal to
wrong.
me as a case.
Ooh.
Mr. Holmes, I'm prepared to overlook your past.
Her
ill
haughty
manner.
impression is certainly
My
right,
niece
though.
recently spent a few
Yes,
days
that
with
is
Sir Henry
correct,
Baskerville,
but her
and he
hair
was
would have been
positively
swept back. She
effusive
would
in
not
his
have had
praise of your
hair
work.
on her face.
Now, you will find
No
both my
bangs.
jewel and my maid.
Neither.
No, that's
Lady
a.
Morgar.
The bangs would have been more
I,
typical of the Regency
believe
period.
This is yours.
Blue carbuncle.
Your maid has run off with the man who removed it from your room. Fortunately, he lost it. This gentleman found it and brought it to me. I have no doubt you wish to reward him. Come, Watson, our commission is at an end. Good day, Lady Morgar, and a happy Christmas to you all.
Happy Christmas to the detective getting $100,000.
Yeah,
Thank
right.
you, my dear Holmes. Thank you. I wouldn't mind being knocked
That's a
down
nice
100
Christmas gift
times
for him.
either, just to see you do
Well, I
that
think
again.
they were giving it to the
Yeah, the
gentleman.
man. Yeah.
Undertake
Who found it in the street. Well, in his goose, rather.
The chief
Yes.
feature.
There we are. That
They
was...
just have a good laugh about it.
Yeah.
It is a real shame that of the 29 episodes produced of this, only 6 have survived.
Yeah.
A travesty. That would have been lovely to watch.
They're such
Well,
good
because the-
productions. Peter Cushing.
Yeah. Production value is great. Peter Cushing is wonderful. I mean, he's great in everything he's ever been in.
Mhm.
You know, regardless of how good or bad the movie, he's never what's bad about it.
Now, I always appreciate classic cinema, perhaps a bit more, and correct me if I'm wrong, but because they don't, I don't know how to put this anyway, they don't dumb down the dialogue. They go fast and they get everything in, and they expect you to keep up rather than giving needless exposition.
Yeah. There's no oversimplification or talking down to the audience.
Right. My source says the viewers had no idea what was going on behind the scenes. What they saw was a pleasant and innocently harmless TV series. There was no sign of the gothic overtones or sexually charged crime that had been proposed early on when they were proposing the BBC Sherlock series. Peter Cushing was good in his portrayal, and nothing of his own worries shone through. The series was well received by many viewers. It had great success. The BBC contemplated another sequel, this time with brand new stories, original stories. They had, however, turned down the chance to make televised versions of Adrian Conan Doyle's and John Dickinson Carr's short stories. Adrian got his own back by forbidding the BBC to create any plots of its own. Peter Cushing, meanwhile, decided he would never again record an entire television series. He said to his friend Douglas Wilmer that he'd rather sweep Paddington Station for a living than go through it again. That was good fun. There was one change. They meet in the end. They had him sign a confession. That I don't think that occurred in the end of the short story. They just had Holmes yell at him and say, "Get out." So I'm not sure, was the implication that he
Yeah.
signed it and he'll turn it in later, or sign it just to scare him?
I think it was to ensure Horner's innocence, and fair treatment
Mhm.
after having been wrongfully accused.
In the story, he just says that the case will fall apart
Yeah.
because they don't have anybody to accuse and they have the jewel back and everything.
Yeah,
What?
I think he just flees in the
Mhm.
original story.
Like I said, they don't the spirit of forgiveness, and they don't want to turn him into a jailbird.
Yeah.
He got
Having
scared straight.
done no crime before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the sense of morality in Sherlock Holmes is very refreshing. It's not just find bad guy, catch bad guy. A lot of the times, Holmes lets him get away or just flee the country because he has his own sense of morality and justice, not restricted
Yeah.
like Scotland Yard is.
And he doesn't feel guilty if people are harmed by his actions, if he feels himself justified.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking of like the adventure of the speckled band.
Oh yeah.
Holmes doesn't feel bad that he pretty much killed a man by way of, you know, a venomous snake.
Hmm.
He is unbothered by that.
Mhm. And there's Charles Augustus Milverton, where he does not participate, but he is just a witness to the man murdered and does not intervene.
Mhm.
That's their business. We would just happen to be here. So he didn't feel the need to intervene to save a man's life, even though a lot of circumstances. We can go into that story another time. Very
Say I'd
good.
be very interested to. I think you've mentioned this before, Pestis, of the psychology of Holmes himself. I'm wondering if anyone has written any articles on it.
I'd have to look into that. I'm sure that people have, whether or
Yeah,
not they want to.
I can't imagine no one having tackled that subject yet.
It would be interesting, I think, anyways.
Yeah.
Very good. So, all in all, what you guys think of the movie and the whole evening?
Oh, very enjoyable.
I loved it.
Good. Let me go ahead and bring this back. Go ahead and hide this, and we'll bring back the mission statement and everything for us. So once again, this was the Vtuber Detainees of Scotland Yard. This was our first meeting. We'll likely have these possibly monthly, schedules allowing. So maybe we'll aim for January next time.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful to me.
Good. All right. Now, let's go ahead and I'll get the end of stuff set up, but you guys talk about yourself. What do you guys have coming up later on this week or later on this month?
Sure. So tomorrow evening, actually, I believe I have it scheduled for 6 p.m., though I may need to push that back. I will be reading Dickens's A Christmas Carol on stream. So, pour yourself a nice drink, come get nice and cozy under a blanket if it's nice and cold where you are, as it is for me, and to, you know, one of the most wonderful Christmas stories. I'll also be reading a few Christmas poems and other short stories, time allowing, but I really want to just read a Christmas carol on stream. That should only take, I believe, about 3.5 hours or so. It's not a very long story. And that's all I have scheduled for the rest of the week. With Christmas Eve, I'm quite busy. I think I have 3 different music gigs to get to that day. But yeah, the holidays are a busy time for musicians. Good busy, but busy nonetheless.
Good. I
But
hope
that's
people bring
all
you your
I've
figgy
got.
pudding.
Yes. If I do end up making a pudding, I will be sure to post pictures on my Twitter. That's all dependent on if I can find some good quality suet.
Contact your local butcher. Trust me, they'll hook you up.
Yeah. No, I'm planning to make a call tomorrow. But yeah, that's all that I've got going on for the rest of the week. Though earlier this week on Sunday, I did debut the VTuber Choir's most recent project, which was a performance of Carol of the Bells. So please go look that up if you are interested. That's something I'm very proud of everybody's hard work and how well it came out.
Very nice.
But that is all that I've got going on. Thank you very much for having me.
Good, I'm glad to have you. Minnie, what do you have going on?
Well, on Friday, since unlike Professor Bloom, I apparently don't have a life. I will be doing a marathon of Christmas literature, so I will actually be reading The Blue Carbuncle on stream. And to beat the dead horse, I'll be doing an encore presentation of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, along with A Visit from Saint Nick. And I have been told if I don't read The Charlie Brown Christmas, I am disowned. So I'll be doing that. So that will be on Friday. I believe I have it scheduled for 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Very good. All right, then. Now, as for myself, this upcoming week, tomorrow I am talking about more philosophy and self-sacrifice. We'll be looking at a journal article on the subject. And on Friday, that's Harry Potter Friday. Thank God it's Harry Potter Friday. We're going through the PC Harry Potter games. And afterwards, I am very excited to have a Harry Potter, but with a gun, watch along in Discord. All instances of magic in the first Harry Potter movie are replaced with guns. So that you know that
I have seen some of those edits, and they're supremely entertaining.
So for instance, in the very opening scene, like Dumbledore's putting out the street lamps. Instead of the little lighter, he shoots them out. So that's what you have to look forward to. Good. Is that...
I might join in for that if I can.
American Harry Potter.
Yeah, I think the formal name was Harry Potter and the Deadly Weapons. Deadly
I
Weapons.
say you're a gunslinger, Harry.
Yeah. But that's what we have going on for this week. I'm not sure about next week, but that is the business for later. Let us try and find somebody to rate. Do you guys have any suggestions? I thought somebody would be on, but they're not on right now. So that was my intended target. Any people you'd like to see?
Look.
Yeah.
Who I know that's on currently. Keeping with a slight mystery theme, I know Nice Eggy is playing Leighton's Mystery Journey, Catriel and the Millionaire's Conspiracy.
I haven't said hello to Nice Eggy before, but I've heard of her.
Yeah, no, she's a wonderful singer. Actually sings in the Vtuber choir and plays lots of visual novels, games like, Ace Attorney, the Zero Escape series, and Professor Layton.
Sure. Could you link that in the live chat?
Yes,
Go ahead and start the raid. Now, we have a tradition here for a raid message. It's always some version of I diagnose you with, and I know exactly what we're saying. I diagnose you with Christmas arson. That was the running theme for this evening. There you go. Copy. Very nice. /raid. Nice Eggy. Thank you very much, everybody. Let's go ahead and get that started. There we go. Thank you very much. Our raid message is I diagnose you with Christmas arson. Just like that. Feel free to add in emotes or change up however you like. This was great, great fun. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you once again to my lovely, lovely Sherlocking Society co-members. Very nice.
Yes, thank you so much for having us, and I'm looking forward to our next meeting. I will make sure to have a drink on hand for the true experience.
True to the spirit. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a lovely, lovely night. I wish Nice Eggy some good Christmas arson.
Remember, arson responsibly.
Responsibly.
Indeed.
Good. All right. Now, bye-bye.